Starting from today, he officially begins his duties as a court blacksmith. A dream he had worked for all his life has finally become a reality. To get closer to the dream of becoming the best blacksmith in the world, the hero made titanic efforts. There was not a single day when he did not forge, learn, and improve his skills. On this day, the sakura bloomed to its full strength. Its pink petals quietly swirled in the air, creating the feeling as if spring itself was blessing his new path. Its light rustle seemed to say, "Congratulations." And the boy promised himself that he would give his all to prove his worth, even if it would be the hardest trial of his life. Suddenly, an unfamiliar girl approached him. Her voice was so melodic and gentle that for a moment it seemed like music was playing. She asked if he was really a blacksmith. She looked like a true aristocrat. The boy confirmed that he was a blacksmith and asked with surprise how she understood that even before he had a chance to introduce himself. Smiling, the girl replied that a blacksmith's license was sticking out of his pocket, so noticeable that it was hard not to notice even from afar. Just a little more, and the document would have fallen out completely. She just managed to catch with her eyes what others might have ignored. Her observation turned out to be remarkably accurate. Without this license, the boy would not have been able to even start work in the forge. Her remark was appropriate and perhaps even saved him from trouble on the very first day. He sincerely thanked her, but the girl just waved her hand as if to say it was not necessary. However, she added that he was too young to be a real blacksmith. There was a bit of surprise and a bit of warmth in her words. The boy, a little embarrassed, explained that today was his first working day, and even his name was actually not real. He was just stepping into this role. He admitted that he had rehearsed a lot, so he asked not to judge him harshly. The girl smiled and said that he was fine. He was kind and sincere, and that was enough for a good start. Introducing herself, she said that her name was Alicia. Her name was as refined as she herself was. At that moment, an invisible but warm thread of acquaintance arose between them. Alicia confirmed that she truly belonged to the nobility, but added that he did not need to behave formally at all. She longed for a simple, sincere conversation. It turned out that she was supposed to be at the ball, but she ran away. Too many men wanted her attention, and she was tired of these senseless ceremonies. She asked him if he knew who he wanted to become. She admitted that she herself was not yet sure of her own desires, but very much wanted to understand what her heart longed for. The boy, without hesitating for a second, answered that his goal was to become the best blacksmith in the world. Conviction blazed in his eyes, which neither doubts nor defeats could break. He understands well that the path will be long and difficult, but he intends to go to the end, no matter how much he has to endure. His will is stronger than the steel he will forge. Alicia replied with a smile that she believed in him. She sincerely wished that he truly became the best blacksmith in the world, and there was not a trace of doubt in her voice. For the boy, this was a surprise. For the first time, someone supported him so openly. He was not used to sincere faith in himself from strangers. Before, he was only mocked. His dreams were ridiculed, and his aspirations became the subject of ridicule. And this girl's support broke the armor of distrust in his heart. Now that he had become the court blacksmith, it seemed that he would often have to see similar charming young ladies. And each meeting was like a new test for the heart. Who knows, perhaps later he would even marry. This thought flashed unexpectedly, but left a slight smile on his lips. However, before dreaming about the future, it was worth starting with something simple, with a basic greeting, and he decided to do it with dignity. The first impression is extremely important. The way you enter a room can determine how you will be perceived in the coming years. He gathered his thoughts. With deep respect, he said, "Good morning." His voice was confident, calm. He tried to make the impression of an adult, not a novice. But the response came sharply. The man angrily ordered to start work immediately. No formalities, no leniency, only action. He was ordered to repair the sword and not leave the forge until he finished, no matter how long it took. An order is an order. Colorful notions of luxurious court life, which the hero painted in his imagination, began to crumble into pieces from the very first task. 3 years have passed since he first stepped into this forge. During this time, he not only forged iron, he tempered himself, becoming a true master day by day. The boy's main duty was to repair damaged weapons, swords, spears, blades, which were to become deadly dangerous again after his intervention. Once he was a simple village blacksmith, but his talent was noticed and he was invited to the court. Filled with hope, He believed that here he could achieve his dream, to become a true master. But the reality turned out to be completely different. Morgan sharply barked not to waste time, and the boy only apologetically said sorry, swallowing anger and fatigue. The leader said that apologies would change nothing. For his mistake, the hero will receive a fine. Part of his salary will be deducted. He wanted to object, but the other did not let him say a word. He did not dare to contradict. Even the thought of resistance seemed to him forbidden. In this place, his voice meant nothing. Such a volume of work is usually done by an entire forge, but now everything was dumped on him alone. The other blacksmith silently stepped aside, leaving him with this burden. It seemed he was deliberately punished for some old grievance, perhaps for that quarrel with one of the masters, which so recklessly got out of control. But officially it was all training. At least that's how Morgan explained it, emphasizing that this was how he was tempering his character. 3 years had passed since the hero came to the court, but every day he faced anger, reproaches, and pain. Eventually he got used to it. Everyone told the truth. He really was not yet ready to work in the workshop. He lacked skill. That was why everyone was dissatisfied. That was why he was punished. Because of this, his salary was lower, and he had fewer days off. But the one to blame, as he was told many times, was only himself. One of the masters asked if the hero had ever thought about his behavior. If not, it was better to leave. After all, everything had to be ready by the end of the holidays. They had received an invitation to the ball, and he should work without shirking. One of them recalled that guests from the neighboring state had not visited the lady for a long time. They were expected at the celebration, so it was necessary to properly welcome her with ready weapons for the honor guard. The fairy still had a lot of work, and if he did not manage by the end of the week, he would have to take the night shift. He had no right to delay. Tomorrow and the day after were supposed to be his days off. It was a chance to rest a little, to catch his breath. But first he had to hand over all the weapons to the knights. Only then could he allow himself a break. Even if he finished by Monday, a new work week would begin, and he needed at least 1 day to recover. But now it was impossible. If not for his own inexperience, he would have managed long ago. In the blacksmith's workshop, there were 2 key tasks: making weapons and casting spells. These duties went hand in hand, because without magic, a sword was just metal. Magical enchantment increases the sharpness and strength of the sword. Thanks to this, the blade does not rust and does not require maintenance. But the effect lasts only a week, so every week a huge batch of weapons arrives at the forge. Enchanting is not as difficult as it seems. First of all, you need to familiarize yourself with the magical code of the weapon. It opens in a special window where all the necessary information is stored. The process involves changing or adding magical symbols. They are applied using magical energy, focusing on the accuracy and consistency of the runes. If the weapon is not maintained or used without restoration, the runes wear off. If the enchantment still holds, it can be strengthened. If it has completely disappeared, it must be applied from the beginning. The hero felt warmth, softness, and a pleasant aroma. For a moment he could not understand what was happening. He fell asleep? He did not even remember how it happened. This meant only one thing. He would not finish his work on time, and this threatened him with even bigger problems. A girl's voice sounded. She said she was in pain. The boy, waking up, was surprised to see that she was nearby and did not immediately understand how it happened. He immediately began to apologize again and again, not even knowing exactly what for. His cheeks burned with shame. It looked as if the girl was truly interested in blacksmithing, because every time she received an invitation to the ball, she came to him. Just yesterday, Mr. Morgan was discussing with others that Lady Alicia had received another invitation to the reception. Her presence in the forge looked unusual, but already familiar. The hero himself had not even changed and was still in his work clothes, had not taken a bath. The girl noticed that if he slept here, he would easily catch a cold. She asked what had happened. He replied that he was fine. The ball had long since passed. Perhaps she stayed overnight and decided to visit him once more before leaving. In any case, he was supposed to finish the work yesterday. He poorly remembered the events, but it seemed he managed to complete everything. Yet Alicia looked at him worriedly and asked if he felt well. His face was pale. Yesterday Morgan hit him as many times before. Usually there were no bruises, but the humiliation hurt more than any marks on the body. Obviously, his behavior irritated the mentor, and now the boy faced only punishment, no hope for relief. He liked Alicia, though he understood their worlds were too different. Even with all his efforts, he would not win her. But at least to look decent before her, at least not to seem pathetic. He wanted to make an impression as a man. Alicia noticed the pain in his eyes and sincerely regretted not having healing potion with her. But the hero reassured her, said everything was fine, apologized, and added that he hadn't even had time to offer her tea. There was still so much to do. She replied that it did not matter, and cautiously asked if she could watch how he worked. The boy was a little embarrassed but allowed it. He had nothing against her presence. He suddenly noticed that the magical symbol had disappeared from one sword. One rune had completely vanished. It needed to be renewed immediately. The girl noticed that this was exactly what she expected. His work showed extraordinary attention to detail. His diligence was impressive. Looking around the entire workshop, she asked in surprise, could he really have enchanted this entire arsenal by himself? It was hard to believe such productivity. She said that it is probably very difficult and asked if all blacksmiths work in such a mode. The boy replied that he is only at the lowest level. And if he can't handle even this level, he can forget about his dream, to become a distinguished master. His tone was bitter and hopeless. Alicia admitted that she did not suspect how difficult and thorny the path of a blacksmith is. His work deserves deep respect, especially at the level of a courtmaster. But the hero just shrugged his shoulders as if to say, there is nothing special about this. He still lacks a lot. Experience, strength, confidence. That girl insisted. On the contrary, he is impressive. What he does himself would be an insurmountable task for many, and others say that he is a failure. Sometimes this thought sounds so often that he himself begins to believe it. She gently asked him to share what was troubling him, and if he refused, she simply would not let him leave. Her voice was soft but firm. He was ashamed, but he still started to speak. He told about the situation from beginning to end. Perhaps for the first time in his life, he was so frank. And once he started, he could no longer stop. Before, he had never shared this with anyone, but now he wanted her to hear. She is the daughter of the Duke, and although he was not sure if he had the right to open up to her like that, his heart could not remain silent. He admitted that he was to blame himself. He has no talent, and everyone is just trying to teach him. But the girl firmly objected. All of this is complete nonsense. She said she should have asked earlier, and the hero, embarrassed, began to apologize, saying he had revealed too much. His eyes filled with tears again, and he did not want her to see him in such a miserable state. At that moment, one of the men burst into the room, rudely called him a failure, and ordered him to enchant the sword immediately. It was one of the knights. He froze in surprise when he saw that the Duchess herself was in the forge. In an ordinary situation, the hero would have already received a blow to the face, but now everything had changed, and probably only thanks to Alicia's presence. He was ordered again to enchant the sword immediately. All eyes were on him. It seems the sword was used very carelessly. The spells cast a few days ago have almost disappeared. The boy strictly asked the knight to be more careful, as the rune structure was seriously damaged. But he only sneered contemptuously that it happened because an inept master cast the spells. His words were full of disdain. Faye calmly replied that he used fairly strong enchantments. The problem is that the materials for standard knightly weapons are mediocre. They do not withstand the proper load. Moreover, the magical scheme has limitations, and if one forgets during battle, its structure collapses. He finished the restoration. The runes were stable. The sword was again in perfect order, ready for battle. It shone like a newly assembled artifact in the hands of an experienced warrior. The knight turned to the girl and invited her for a walk to the embankment. He offered to show her the surroundings, but Alicia politely declined, wishing him all the best. She asked if he was often treated like that, and the boy felt bitter shame. Even next to the girl he liked, he was unable to maintain dignity. Alicia said he was too tense. If it continued like this, he would undermine his health. His exhaustion was obvious even to the naked eye, but the hero replied bitterly that if he could not cope here, he would not be able to work anywhere else. For him, the court was the last chance. In case of failure, his license would be revoked. In fact, he had already tried to leave. After a year of work, he came to Morgan and asked for resignation, stating he could no longer endure it. But Morgan threatened. If he left, he would annul his license. Without it, he could not even hold a hammer. If he continued to work secretly, he would end up in prison as a violator. Alicia confessed that she actually came to make him an unusual offer. She had thought about it for a long time before daring to do so. She asked him to marry her. The hero did not believe that she meant marriage in the literal sense, living together as a man and a woman. But the girl confirmed that was exactly the meaning she put into her words. At the same time, she noted it was nothing personal. Her proposal was more a request for help than a confession of feelings. Countless men are vying for her hand, but she does not want to marry any of them. She only needs a fake fiancé who will scare off all the suitors. The hero was a blacksmith, like her father. She thought this could be an argument. Moreover, he was a person she trusted. Her family comes from a dynasty of blacksmiths. One of her ancestors forged a sword that became a national treasure. For this, the king granted their family a title. Her father worked in the forge all his life. The hero asked what he had to do with it. The girl explained, the family tradition requires that someone among the members have the gift of a blacksmith. They need an heir with talent in the blood. This means that it is not about the blood itself. If the gift is inherited, the family will accept anyone. So she asks him to become her fiancé. Suitors constantly crowd around her, and she is tired. She will marry only when she truly falls in love. Until then, he will have to stay close in the role of a shield. If he agrees to go to her homeland, she will take care of a new license. No one there will mock him anymore. It is a beneficial deal for both. But the boy replied that he has no talent. He is afraid he will not be able to help her, even if he tries very hard. But she objected. She had seen his work and always considered him the most talented among all the blacksmiths she knew. For her, it's not just about abilities. She respects him for his persistence, honesty, and diligence. These are what she values most. He tried not to look at her the way he had started. He was already on the edge. A little more, and he would misunderstand everything. He cautiously asked how she herself imagined this agreement, because his thoughts were becoming too confused. The girl said it was better to be a fake bride than to marry a stranger whom she neither knew nor loved. But the hero awkwardly replied that one cannot just say such things. Her words confused him, but she insisted it was just a performance, nothing more. Just an agreement that gives both freedom. In reality, maybe she did not want anything serious, but she felt sorry for the man who had no way out. That is why she chose him. Even if there would be no real marriage, he would have a chance for a peaceful life as a blacksmith. And if she was truly sure, he agreed to become her fiancé. Alicia said there would be another ball tonight, and after it, they would go to her estate. The hero nodded and asked what time the departure was. He needed to manage to get off work, but he was not sure he could leave so easily. He was told when quitting, you must give 2 weeks' notice, and there was no time left. The last time he mentioned this, he was simply beaten, but now he had a fiancé, and together they would figure something out. She asked not to call her lady anymore. Now that he was her fiancé, titles lost their meaning. From now on, they were equals and should address each other simply. The hero gathered his courage and honestly said he could no longer endure it. He wanted to leave on his own, not as a loser, but as a person who made his own choice. The man got seriously angry and started shouting that he had put a lot of effort into the boy, and now he is simply betraying everything he was taught. Others joined in. They said they also tried, taught him etiquette, gave him shelter, and now without them, he is needed by no one. He has nowhere to go. Once he would have silently swallowed these words, but now it's different. He made a promise to Alicia, and breaking it means betraying himself. He has no right to back down. The hero calmly but firmly said that he wanted to leave. He could no longer endure it. Morgan asked if he had another job, and what he planned to do after escaping. Silently, without extra words, the man extended his hand and demanded to see his license. The master's eyes shone with cold contempt. He tore the document to pieces right before his eyes and declared, from now on, the boy is not a blacksmith, and in this country he no longer has the right to work. He was told not to even hope for certificate restoration. This is a system controlled by them. If he wants to keep his status, he must stay. But the boy already hated this country where documents are more important than a person. The blacksmith lowered his voice and said, if he stays for another year, he will get a promotion, and they will hire him an assistant. They said everything will be better. But the hero replied shortly and firmly, I no longer work for you. There was more strength in these words than in any sword. But the man did not stop. He said he no longer knows how to do anything else. And if he works illegally, he will be arrested. Threats poured one after another. Another added that without them he would be completely alone. No one would accept him. And when he realizes this, he will crawl back and work even worse than before. One of the workers added, he was almost accepted into the guild, but now after this no one will take him. All doors are closed. But the boy had already sworn in his mind. His foot would never step here again, even if he had to pay a very high price for it. He did not know if Alicia had heard that quarrel. If the walls were not soundproof, she found out everything, and he did not want her to hear those insults at all. At that moment, one of the men saw Alicia, and with feigned kindness noted that he had not seen her for a long time, and that she was becoming more and more charming every day. Alicia came closer and asked directly if Faye was really fired now. Her voice was calm, but there was inner tension in it. Koval grimaced. He said that he would be of no use anyway. He was given perfect conditions, but he neglected them. And apparently he learned nothing. The girl answered calmly but firmly, he already works in her residence. This is not a request. This is a fact. Koval contemptuously said that the boy was not even capable of forging a normal sword, let alone magic. Alicia replied that in her opinion, he was talented, and if he did not mind, she was taking him. She added that she herself was interested in blacksmithing. She admired those who worked with their hands, who put their soul into the work. For her, the hero was only a fictitious fiancé, but for him, she was becoming something more. And with each day, he was falling in love with her more and more. He leaves the empire with her, without regret, without fear, only with faith in a new beginning. Their path leads south, to the kingdom where the girl's ancestral estate is located. As soon as they arrive, her father will already be waiting for them, a man whose opinion will be decisive. Only a day of travel remained to the place, and this is much less than the entire path the hero had traveled in his soul. Even if it will be difficult, it is a trifle. After all, he worked in the forge without rest from morning till night and endured everything. All these years, he had not a single day of peace, and now, as a new life approaches, he fears neither fatigue nor the future. Alicia reported that she had already written to her father. He is supposed to wait for them right now. This worried the hero. He did not know how he would perceive him. The boy apologized to her. He said that maybe all this looks strange, but he only acted logically. As much as he could. He bowed his head low, apologized for going too far. After all, the engagement was only a performance, and he, it seems, crossed the line. Alicia said that although he acted unexpectedly, there was nothing bad in it, so there was no need to worry. The hero asked if this meant they could just improvise so that everything looked more natural. She smiled and said that this is exactly how it would be. The hero agreed. Improvisation would become their new strategy. Life does not always follow a clear plan. She told her father that before him was a 1 in a million talent and asked him to pay attention to how the hero casts spells. His skills are not simple. The father replied calmly but demanding, let him show exactly how he enchants the sword and renews the existing symbols. He needed not a show, but a result. The blade was covered with magical runes. However, even they could not compare to those the boy renewed at the court. This is a high-ranking weapon, possibly a captain of knights. The sword had exquisite inlay, engraving, and a shape the hero had never seen before. Before him was the true work of a master of the highest level. The man gave him a week. If he couldn't manage, it meant he had no place here. The trial began. The hero calmly said it wouldn't take much time. He was focused, confident, and determined to prove his skill. Most of the symbols were intact. Only part of the ruins needed restoration. This greatly simplified the work. He had already completed worse tasks. Only a few runes had disappeared. It was only necessary to insert the correct signs in the empty spots, preserving the harmony of the overall spell structure. Having examined the initial and final symbols, the hero gradually understood the general logic of this enchantment. The pattern began to form a single magical formula. He quietly said, reproducing an exact copy is not easy, but the effect will be almost identical. The main thing is the result, not the perfection of details. The man stopped in amazement. This could not be. He had never thought the boy was so gifted. This changed his attitude. The boy thanked him, sincerely, without pride, without admiration, simply, with deep respect. But the blacksmith sternly stated that he was not yet ready to accept him as the future husband of his daughter. It was not permission, but a warning. At first, Faye thought he was too harsh, but later he understood. It was not hostility but a trial, and he seemed to be passing it. The boy said he would work with all his might. In response, the man said, "Then I expect a workshop to be set up in the estate. It is already at your disposal." He was allowed to use all necessary materials, promised to take care of supplies. They even submitted a request for a new license, ordering, "Do not lose it again." From now on, the hero has complete freedom of action. As a blacksmith, he decides for himself where to apply his gift. No restrictions, no coercion. Previously, he was only allowed to cast spells. He was forced, but now he can truly work with metal, and he couldn't believe it. It was more than a dream. The father informed that several knights might already need his services. He arranged everything with the servant. He himself is going on business for some time. And finally, he sternly warned, "Do not dare touch my daughter while I am away." His gaze left no doubt. This was not a request. Alicia was radiant. She managed to convince her father. And Faye honestly admitted that he had not yet realized everything, but he would work on it and on himself. She said that this was actually the first time the father had praised anyone, and that was already a good sign. He was recognized, at least partially. The hero felt deep gratitude. He owes a lot to this girl. It would be wonderful if he could repay her for everything, even a little. A maid appeared before him. She politely introduced herself and said she would show him around the residence. There was already a equipped forge in the manor, especially for Lady Alicia's fiancé. Everything was prepared for his arrival. Forges are usually similar to each other, but here there was even a real furnace. He couldn't remember the last time he had seen one. In the yard, work was limited to magic, but here, real craftsmanship. And although magical tools are convenient, having the opportunity to work with metal manually is priceless. Alicia said, "If anything else is needed, let him ask." He thanked her. Everything was already at his fingertips. The girl named Leafy smiled and politely said, "In that case, allow me to show you to your room, Mr. Fiancé." Leafy showed the room where he would now live. She repeated once more, if he needed anything, he should ask. The hero thanked her and said that for now he had everything. But if something appeared, he would inform. It seemed to him that life was finally starting to get better. It seemed for the first time in a long time that he was breathing freely. Until very recently, he worked under conditions where his health could break at any moment. He was forced to work, endure, be silent. And now beside him was a kind and intelligent girl, formerly a fiancée. Even if the engagement was not real, it seemed to him that it could not have been better. And most importantly, now he is truly free. Not a slave of the system, not a student of the masters who tormented him. A free blacksmith. He no longer needs to fear the morning work that must be submitted by dawn. He will be able to sleep well, and he will have days off, even every day if he wants. Although this is already too much. Excessive freedom can spoil not only reputation, but also complicate the engagement. He understood. Everything has a limit. He no longer had any duties. And in this lies the greatest trial. Free time is not always a gift. Sometimes it is a challenge. Tomorrow he will start performing new duties. And for the first time, he will decide for himself how much to work. Once every step was punished with beatings. But now, maybe every day will be happy. The maid reported that the boy was successfully settled in the room assigned to him. Alicia thanked her for a job well done. She admitted that everything went even better than she expected. And inside her, hope was growing. Liffy inquired, "When should one expect news?" Her tone was casual, but her eyes were attentive. She said that she doesn't understand anything. After all, when leaving the house, Alicia said that she was going to ask him to become her husband. Alicia, blushing, replied that she had mixed things up a little. She was only trying to ask him about it. But confessing was not easy. These are not real relationships. But they talked about marriage, and that's something. The wedding was sudden, and even she is surprised by her own calm. After all, it looks strange. Leafy asked if the wedding date had already been set. A usual question, but it carried a note of playfulness. Now she understood that Alicia really had made a proposal. And even if it was just a cover, it was very real. Alicia said she was just trying to do everything as best as possible. The girl sighed. If he was even a little interested, he should have understood everything from her behavior. She did not hide her feelings. But Leafy smiled and remarked, "It's not just noticeable. It's obvious. Everyone sees everything. And she is no exception." Alicia thought she was hiding her feelings well. but now she felt even more embarrassed. It turned out she had not fooled anyone. Leafy said, "Although it is a cover, the statement has already been made, so it's worth starting preparations for the wedding. The only thing is, the father has not yet given his blessing. So the hero must first prove himself as a blacksmith, and only after that, there will be a decision. The family will wait to assess his true abilities." Alicia agreed. The maids are right. Their family gained its name through blacksmithing, and she can marry only a truly gifted one. As a future daughter of a noble family, she loses the freedom of choice and love. She always knew this, but accepting it is another matter. Leafy said that she could still marry her beloved, but it seems it's too early to rejoice yet. There is still a lot of uncertainty ahead. Meanwhile, in the forge, the former masters were discussing the hero. One asked, "What now? Hire a new apprentice?" After all, he did not return, and he stood out too much for a simple novice. The others agreed. The master began to inquire which house Alicia belonged to. He was interested in her family. They were known only by their title, but rumors spread that they sometimes marry off daughters to the most talented blacksmiths. So maybe there is something to it. At first, they were not just blacksmiths, but looking at this boy, it is hard to believe he is gifted. He can't even hold a hammer properly. He was given simple tasks, and he failed. They were convinced eventually he would be driven out. The hero got lost, but in the end he would crawl back. The only question is how much time it will take before he is thrown out of the new place. The man thought it would take at most a week, and the one who has nowhere else to go will definitely return. He simply has no other choice. And when that happens, all the weekly workload will be dumped on him again, including all the debts for the time of absence. The punishment will be just. Thus, everything is planned for 2 weeks ahead. They will not even start anything new. Just wait for his return. He deserves this punishment. But first, according to the master, the boy will have to explain himself before the knights. The new cycle of humiliation will begin with them. The blacksmith was convinced. Sooner or later, the boy himself will realize his incapacity, and then he will crawl back again, like a prodigal servant. Meanwhile, the hero woke up before dawn. It had already become a habit that could not be erased in one day. The body rose on its own. During his service at the court, he rose every morning with the first light to manage all the work by himself. Sometimes to finish what he did not complete yesterday. Spells, orders, duties, more than any ordinary blacksmith. From dawn till midnight, day after day. But now waking up, he notices. It is not so early outside yet. For the first time, he does not have to hurry. A lot of time had passed since he last worked in the smithy, so the boy decided not to delay and immediately got to work. Which ore looked wonderful. Bright, heavy, it glittered from within with a magical shine. Which ore is a special metal sensitive to spells. It is indispensable for blacksmithing, as only from it can true enchantment be created. It strengthens steel many times over. The most important thing is that this redhead is easy to get from demons. That is why it became a valuable resource for masters. To obtain ordinary iron, you need to mine in shafts and constantly search for new veins. But for witch ore, it is enough to kill a demon. Gloves made of demonic leather withstand extremely high temperatures. Their strength allows working even with molten metal. In the forge, they use the magic of fire, water, and earth. And you should always start with the flame. It is exactly what the hero will need today. There are several types of witch ore, from common to rare. Their quality is determined by class. The highest is considered ore of class S, then A, B, C, D, E, and finally F. It is the most common and cheapest. F and E class ores are the most commonly used. They are not of the best quality, but they are convenient to work with in daily tasks. Today he decided to start with something simple, to warm up. Creating the most powerful weapon is not his goal. Today he will forge a knife. The ore is heated to red hot. The moment has come to pour it into the casting mold. Then the temperature is raised even higher. In ancient times, metal was tempered in furnaces. Today, such technology is considered outdated. The material becomes soft and pliable. The hero forms a clay matrix using earth magic. After that, carefully pour molten metal into it. It is important not to lose a single drop. When the mold is filled, it's time to cool it down. For this, the hero uses water magic quickly, precisely without damage. As a result, a steel ingot is extracted from the mold. Still raw, unformed, but already full of potential. Then it is reheated once more and gradually given the desired shape. The knife begins to be born. You need to listen to the sound when striking. Steel needs to be cooled and then heated again. Only this way will it harden. This process significantly improves the quality of the metal, and the better the metal, the higher its frequency, and therefore its magical potential. He does not have much time to make the knife today. Next time, he will prepare all the materials in advance. Now it is just training. There were many plans. The form came out almost as he had envisioned. Now it was time to work with the clay to refine every detail, every curve. Cooling the blade enhances its strength and increases the magical potential of the material. Before grinding, it is necessary to evenly distribute the magic across the entire surface. This is the key to stable enchanting. The hero prepared cold water near the cutting edge, and immediately a pattern appeared. It became alive, like a breathing symbol on the steel. Now it was time to refine the edge. The hero summoned the magic of the wind and carefully sharpened the blade. The blade's line became mirror-like. The surface of the knife shone, smooth, shiny. Only the final enchantment remained to be applied to fully bring the weapon to life. He finished making the knife and decided to test it in action. This was the moment of truth. His first independent work in his new life. Balance, weight, sharpness. Everything was perfect. He hadn't worked with such detail for a long time. 3 hours had passed, but they flew by like a moment. It turned out it was already time for breakfast. He had completely forgotten about food. Earlier, during hard work, he only managed to grab a quick bite right in the forge, without diverting attention from the fire. Seeing the girl, he asked in surprise how long she had been standing there. She replied that it had been about an hour. He hadn't noticed her because of his concentration. Leafy said that the girl had learned he was in the workshop today and decided to come. She just wanted to see him at work. Alicia awkwardly asked him not to look at her so intently. She was embarrassed. She looked away, but the smile remained. The hero realized he had overdone it again, and she was right. He really had been staring too long, forgetting how to lower his gaze. But the girl said it was all right. After all, she was still his fiancée, even if not a real one. And if the moment is right, the looks are not scary. He plunged into thoughts. Yes, he is a fictitious groom, so it's not worth thinking too much. She probably just pretended not to notice where he was looking. She traveled all this distance to see him work, and he didn't even notice her presence. But Alicia just smiled. She was happy watching him, completely absorbed in his work. Alicia said that the knife turned out very beautiful. A sharp blade, quality enchantment, a true masterpiece. The hero replied that he tried very hard. If he had known she would watch, he would have tried even harder. But even so, he gave his all sincerely, and it was felt in every curve of the blade. The boy was surprised. Can she handle a blade? Alicia replied that she had learned a bit of fencing exclusively for self-defense. He said that he got a little distracted, and that she looks incredibly beautiful. Then he added, "She is not just beautiful, she is stunningly beautiful." The words flew from his lips. This is just a fake engagement. But the girl behaved so convincingly next to him that everything seems real. In such moments, he could not help but wonder, what if this is not a game? Although, if you think about it, any girl can probably convincingly pretend. At least that's what they say. But for some reason, with Alicia, it didn't look like a game. She invited him to breakfast. Her voice was light, but there was something warm hidden in it, like an invitation to something more than just food. On the way, Alicia asked, "Did he always cast spells so well? His enchantments are impressive." The guy explained that he had to work quickly and accurately. The workload was incredible. Over time, he just got better, and also thanks to that hellish money that forced him. That is why time with her warms the heart. Her presence is like a counterbalance to all those years of suffering. When he was going to the smithy, he already smelled fresh bread, but he did not pay attention. He could not believe that breakfast would be real. He could not remember the last time he saw so many treats. Alicia said that if he did not mind, she would like to learn more about his past. He worked until late at night, hardly eating. If he managed to find a minute, he chewed right in the smithy. The food had no taste, only function. But now when he has breakfast with her, this is the best breakfast of his life. Even tears welled up. Everything was incredibly delicious. After the meal, Alicia suggested a walk around the city, to show the surroundings, to change the atmosphere a bit. She said that she rarely meets people in the city, but during festivals, many introduce themselves to her father, and therefore some may recognize her face. In the city, Alicia's beauty is not taken calmly. If she is recognized, quiet walks can be forgotten. Glances, whispers, invitations, all of this immediately ruins the atmosphere. She said that their current walk resembles a date. Her voice sounded calm, but with a note of warmth that was hard to miss. The boy awkwardly agreed, yes, it really is like a date, but he did not understand why so much trouble comes from it. After all, he is not her real fiancé. Therefore, he could not understand why she tries so hard to maintain the illusion of a relationship between them. He sincerely believed that if he became a good blacksmith and earned her father's approval, that would be enough. Everything else does not matter. The hero assumed she does not want to marry a stranger, so she chose a fake engagement with him. He is only a cover, so she does not necessarily have to pretend that they are on a date. Leafy noticed. Alicia's father always dreamed that she would marry a talented blacksmith, and at the same time, he wanted the marriage to be based on love. He supported her in this. That is why he did not rush her into marriage. By giving time, he was giving a choice. Alicia agreed. Such an opportunity is very important to her. Therefore, she asked him not to worry about anything. She knows what she is doing. Leafy smiled and said she would leave them alone, wishing them a good time. She disappeared as quietly as she had appeared. The hero did not even notice her presence. But that is exactly what is expected from well-trained servants. And the knowledge that someone else understands the essence of their relationship was somewhat comforting. Alicia returned again to the topic, how to influence her father's opinion. She continued to think over every step. She timidly asked if she could take his hand. They would have to walk holding hands, and this, according to her, would affect her father's attitude. He must see the bond between them. She confirmed, because you never know when one of her father's knights might notice you on the street. Even a casual glance is important. The boy had already taken her hand, but it did not become easier. Now, since this was a date, he was even more nervous. He did not remember the last time he walked through the city so calmly, without the burden of duties, without fear of orders. And now from now on, he no longer needed to hurry anywhere. No order was driving him forward, and this was unusual. Although he is no longer obliged to work to exhaustion, he will still make an effort to improve. If he continues in the same spirit, perhaps Alicia's father will acknowledge him, but she asked not to rush. Meanwhile, in the old smithy, the master said that the fake apprentice disappeared more than a week ago and still has not returned. Someone noted that one must endure. The estate of this family is located far from the capital, and if it was liberated, it will take time to return. But the master was sure. All this was predictable, because they are the only ones on whose mercy he could rely. And he will understand this. He doesn't even have a blacksmith's license left, and without documents, no forge will accept him. He will have to return to the palace with requests again. But the conditions will be harsh. The first 2 months without salary and then pennies. This is the price for betrayal. At that moment, a captain came to them. He brought the order. He needed magic for the sword. Before them stood none other than the owner of the highest knightly title in the country. The master was delighted. Although the captain had his own blacksmith named Tai, he had come personally. This meant something. The men were shocked. Such a respectable person came alone. But the captain said he did not come for nothing. He wanted to find out something. He wanted to talk to the one who enchanted his sword. He was intrigued by the style felt in the runes. But the sword was intended for an ordinary knight, and their apprentice worked on it. This broke all expectations. The captain said that for their current knights, it is a true blessing to receive a weapon with such enchantments. There was respect in his voice, born only from experience. Once, when he was still an ordinary knight, they were issued swords in which traces of magic were barely discernible. On the outside, like ordinary steel, without soul or power. At that time, blacksmiths hardly cast any spells. There was neither the possibility nor sufficient knowledge. Everything looked meager and hopeless. And this fake apprentice was nothing like a real mage. His magic was childish play. Even with minimal effort, one could do better. But the captain said something very strange. The sword he remembered was like trash, but now completely different. And the captain noted, the one who casts these spells, even on a simple sword, deserves high praise. He wants to entrust his own sword to this fake apprentice. The captain openly said he wants that very boy to enchant the blade, no one else. He himself cannot read magical inscriptions, but his blacksmiths declared, the blades brought are made at a high level. That is why he came. He wanted to meet this master. The chief blacksmith waved it off, saying that the boy has no talent at all. He just once managed to cast a good spell. Pure coincidence. The fake casts dozens of spells a week, and out of 100, a few might turn out decent. But he has no gift. No matter how hard he tries, he will not become a master. Despite everything, the captain was optimistic. He will leave the sword here and later see what comes of it. The blacksmith immediately suggested, maybe it would be better if he himself enchanted the sword. As the head of the workshop, he would definitely do the job better than the apprentice. But the captain replied, since the boy is on vacation, he will return soon. He has time. So let them pass on the wishes, and he will wait for the results. He trusts them, and when the work is completed, it is enough to simply inform any of his knights. If even the apprentice's work caused such admiration, then the true master should impress even more. The blacksmith realized, this is a once-in-a-lifetime chance, and if he doesn't seize it now, it will go to another. He decided he would cast the spell himself. After all, this is his forge, and he must take advantage of the situation. If even the weak magic of this boy made such an impression, then his will definitely exceed expectations. And then he will become the captain's personal blacksmith. Because anyone, even the most mediocre wizard, will do it better than him. The blacksmith was not lacking in self-confidence. He said he would not waste such a chance. All the profit, only his, and the order as well. This is his sword, his contract. If he becomes the captain's personal blacksmith, he will inscribe his name in the history of magical forging. As the fifth son of a noble but poor family, he had no prospects. But now he runs the court forge, a chance he once feared to even dream of. Meanwhile, the heroes reached the clock tower. It offered the best view of the entire city, both day and night. Before them lay long stairs. The hero barely held on. Fatigue took its toll. The girls reassured him. Just a little more, and they would be there. She said this was her favorite place. The boy looked around and agreed. It was truly incredibly beautiful here. Alicia guessed that the night city or dawn would look even better. The hero suggested staying until sunset, and she was delighted. He was hot when they were climbing, but now a cool wind was blowing. He wondered where to hide from the draft. It was a bit awkward. The hero was looking for a topic to talk about because the silence had become too loud. Next to them, they saw a scene of betrayal. One man was arguing something, and two girls were shouting at him, outraged and betrayed. That man was making excuses. It was supposedly a mistake, but the girls did not listen. Trust had already been lost. Meanwhile, in the smithy, the blacksmith said, the hero needs to test his skills, because if he wants to be called a master, let him prove it with a deed. The new license allowed him to legally trade in the city. He could create any weapon or tool and display it for sale in a shop right in the center of the capital. But there was one condition. He was not to mention the engagement to the blacksmith's daughter. There should not even be a hint of it. The hero replied that he would start working today. As for resources, the master will provide him with ores of F and E class, but he will extract higher quality materials on his own. Of course, this ore will be enough to make tools for ordinary inhabitants, and even such a class of goods will become a real treasure for many. The time has come to return to the craft seriously. To begin with, he decided to prepare the materials carefully and thoughtfully. The most popular weapons in the shops are longswords. Before starting, you should decide on the quantity worth forging. But one must not forget about quality either. Even the best weapon will not find a buyer if it costs too much. Balance is the key. His clients will mostly be adventurers. Among them, there are enough S-class, but the majority are D or E. They need quality but affordable weapons. Ideally, the sword fits immediately for several ranks. Perhaps it is worth creating a model similar to those he forged for the knights. A lot of time has passed since he last made long swords. He will have to put in more effort than usual. The molds into which he poured the molten metal had to be strong. They must not deform under the influence of high temperature. The first step was melting the witch's ore. The process required concentration and precision. If you pour the melt into a mold and cool it with the magic of water, the material hardens quite quickly. That is exactly what he did. It seems everything worked out. The process went smoothly. Everything is almost ready again, a feeling of confidence in my own hands. It is necessary to increase the temperature once more to harden the blade, and then polish the surface using wind magic. Next are the wooden pins that will serve as the base for the handle. He carved them precisely and carefully. Only the details remain to be connected. to drive nails into the pre-drilled holes. At first I wanted to fix it at the base, but I changed my mind. The other options seemed more reliable. Thus he completed his first simple longsword. The result was modest but convincing. The hero hesitated. Was he sharp enough? He decided to make another one just like it, for certainty. In the palace, weapons were regularly enchanted with powerful spells. As the knights dealt with monsters that ordinary guards could not handle, adventurers did not need such magic. In the end, he forged 3 swords, and he himself was amazed at where he got so much strength, as if he was not working alone. If his magic had weakened, he would not have managed. But the strength remained. Probably it was precisely because of exhaustion from service that it was lacking before. He managed to create 5 blades, and he decided to stop there. Next, not today. He wanted to wipe his face. Sweat was dripping, and his hands were covered in soot and metal. Suddenly, the girl got scared. She did not notice how he approached. The boy just smiled. He won, because she did not even notice his presence. The hero said he was almost not tired, so he could forge a couple more swords. The girl was surprised by his endurance. Her eyes widened. The last time he worked in much worse conditions, so the current workload seemed trivial. But the girl insisted, enough. He has been working non-stop since early morning. In the court smithy, such work would have completely exhausted him. But now, no. Maybe he is really getting stronger. She said the hero was obsessed with work. Tomorrow he plans to sell the swords in the city, and merchants from all over the district will arrive there in the next 2 days. In his native village, such skill was highly valued. That is why, despite his humble origin, he was accepted into the royal smithy. Despite working in the palace forge, he felt like a complete nobody there. His efforts were despised, emotions were not spared, and no one cared how it affected him. But now everything is different. The time has come to assert yourself confidently. He has already set the price, a fair value for the main weapon of the adventurer. The hero said he would try to sell the swords tomorrow. The girl replied that his moment of glory was very close. She promised that she would definitely help him. It was said simply but sincerely. But the guy did not want to use her influence. He did not seek self-affirmation to hide behind her title. In response, she said with a smile that then she would put on a mask and simply become a stranger in the crowd. Alicia assured that everything would be fine, and added, if he is doing all this for her, then she also wants to help from the bottom of her heart. He agreed, but on the condition, no one should find out her real name. He waited for tomorrow with excitement. She promised to do everything so that people would see his weapon is the best. In her eyes burned a determined desire to help. She put so much effort into this day that he was afraid. What if nothing sells? But now such a result was simply impossible. This was his first real business. Before he just exchanged weapons for food, clothing, and lodging. He had never engaged in trade. His village was small, and all skills were passed from person to person in simple words, simple deeds. In the palace, he never had time to learn the market, and now everything had become even more complicated. He still did not know what price to set confidently. If you pay the entrance fee, you will get a permit to trade for a day. He took advantage of this opportunity. Under no circumstances should her name be mentioned publicly. If they find out he has connections with the Duke, it will break his promise. The girl had to come up with a pseudonym, so the boy himself invented a new name for her for a trading adventure. Trade is allowed only on fair days. To sell at other times, you must have your own shop and the appropriate documents. The hero decided to start with a regular stall. In the future, a real shop. The dream of owning a business stirred the heart. He applied for a trade license and managed to reserve a spot for his stall at the city market. So far, he has displayed only 2 swords, not many, but it was the first step taken with hope and determination. But there were no buyers at all. No one even approached, no looks, no interest. He did not expect it to be easy, but he did not expect such cold. Meanwhile, people were crowding near other stalls. Their stalls looked attractive, bright, and imaginative. Next time, we need to think about the design as well. Then the girl took the initiative and began calling people loudly, confidently, sincerely. But she still thought that she rather hindered than helped. She felt that nothing was working out. The hero assured that he was glad that she was calling people. In fact, he was simply happy that they were nearby. But people passed by, no one stopped. The girl was sure their swords would interest at least someone. He remembered how in the village at first no one addressed him either. The hardest part is to make the first sale, the first breakthrough. but he is confident in his work. His swords are perfect for mid-level adventurers. And finally, the first client approached them. The man asked if long swords were sold here. The buyer wanted to move to a new rank and was looking for a weapon that could accompany him on this path. The sword was comfortable and light. The hero explained that he had cast a special spell on it. Considering that the buyer was rank F, he might have had too few coins. Other swords are heavier to use. This one was created specifically for those like him, beginners on the verge of a breakthrough. Under other circumstances, the hero might have bargained, but not today. At such moments, it is not worth openly talking about your funds. He said that the price of the sword was actually much higher than the offered one. And it was true. Even if he wanted to, he would not lower the price. But today, his goal is to make a name for himself, not to get rich. The adventurer agreed. The price was justified. The sword was truly magnificent. But the hero decided to make an exception and give it for the offered price. In return, let him tell other adventurers. He had not thought about it yet, but word of mouth could become his first ally. Every week, on market days, he will stand behind the counter with a flag. Now he has a plan. The buyer promised to tell his friends about him. This is where it all begins. He received less than he hoped for, but was glad even for that. The first earnings are like the first fire in the forge. The Duke assured he will provide materials in any quantity. For now, there is no need to worry about expenses. The first sword was sold. The hero completed the task he set for himself today. He understood. He would not sell all the swords. But now when the young adventurer shows his trophy to his friends, customers will appear. The girl said that next time things will definitely go better. After all, he made these swords himself. This was his first earning at the market. A good start for a blacksmith who once had nothing. He decided to report on the result. It was a matter of honor. He reported one long sword sold. In his voice, modest pride and excitement. As a token of gratitude for the materials and access to the workshop, he wanted to give the earned coins. It was his debt of honor. The man replied that the ore supply was fine for now. He should not worry about it. But the fact that the boy lowered the selling price made him think. There was still a lot of work ahead. He said that in such a state he would not entrust his daughter to him. The hero assured, sales will grow. But the blacksmith replied, prove it not with words but with results. From now on, the boy needed to study the market more deeply to understand how to increase demand. The city was full of weapon shops. Their assortment was huge, and he decided to inspect everything personally. First of all, he was interested in how exactly the goods were displayed. Even that mattered. Long swords had steady demand. It was a chance. If there are two equally effective options, people will always choose the one that looks better. Maybe it was worth decorating the handle with carving. He decided to expand the assortment. Add daggers, versatile knives. They were bought by both adventurers and ordinary housewives. In the market, one could meet people of all ranks, and that could come in handy in the future. When a hard day comes and there is a need to earn quickly, the fair would always remain his backup way. The hero noted that adventurers do not change. The girl replied that exactly so, they live life to the fullest. The young man went to registration. He found the adventurer's registration department, a spacious hall. Silence. Everything looked simple. There was no queue at all, so he thought he would manage quickly. For registration, only a name and personal file are needed. But he did not have a file, so he had to fill everything out from scratch. He registered a guild membership card and entered data about his magical abilities. Registration completed, he was thanked. In case of card loss, you need to contact the department. The first one was issued free of charge, but you will have to pay for a replacement. At that moment, the hero saw some men starting to bother the girl. He instantly stood up for her, without hesitating for a second. Turning to her, he said that it was time for them to go. Strangers grabbed her by the hand, claiming they were already finished. They started shouting, but the boy commanded the girl to break through the crowd. One of the adventurers tried to pursue and accidentally collided with another man. He sharply responded with aggression, and the situation almost got out of control. The girl admitted that no one had ever treated her like that before. She was confused. She said she was a little scared. It was a new experience for her. The boy admitted his fault. He should have taken her with him, but she replied that everything was fine. He arrived on time. Moreover, her maid was nearby. In case of danger, she would definitely intervene. There was little time left until the next fair, so the hero decided to improve the quality of the made daggers. First, it is necessary to melt the ore in the classical way, as in a real forge. Then it should be poured into a mold created with the help of earth magic and make a steel plate. The next stage is improving the quality of the steel itself. It contains many unwanted impurities. Using magical techniques, he extracts them from the material. The hero raises the temperature of the plate and works continuously with the hammer, maintaining stable heat. This should be repeated several times to achieve perfect metal quality. He checked the magic code. The runes remained intact. Incorrect use of magic could destroy them. He needed to improve control over the flow of magic, especially during hammer strikes. Although the result was a bit rough, he managed to fix some of the flaws. The final application of enchantments is done at the end, when the main work is completed. The runes are restored. It is not necessary to start the magic from the very beginning. It was time to give the plate the shape of a knife, carefully, precisely, step by step. Next came cooling with water magic and then polishing with wind to a mirror shine. The blade turned out flawless, sharp, balanced. It could be used both in battle and for processing meat. The magical component took the most time. Thanks to this, the knife was of higher quality than ordinary weapons. But the hero decided to take a break. Otherwise, the girl would start to worry. The boy thought he could make another one later. He was so captivated by the process that it was hard to stop. But he realized, if he didn't stop, he would make her worry again. Alicia came to him, and he immediately invited her to look at his work. She said that the quality was much better than last time. The girl smiled. He always knew how to impress. The boy thanked her and said that after such words, he wanted to make one more knife. She reminded that there were only a few days left until the auction, but suggested not to rush. She confessed why she likes watching him work, but he spends so much time in the smithy that she feels lonely. She understands how important it is for him, but would be happy to spend even a moment longer with him. The boy thought that she noticed the maid, and therefore played the role of the bride very convincingly. You never know whose eyes are watching you. They were supposed to look like they were in love. He replied that he also wanted to be with her for even 1 second longer, so he decided to finish the work. He suggested spending the day together. Alicia sincerely thanked him for this moment. She noticed that the place for trading this time was much farther than the previous one. The boy replied that he wanted to leave earlier, but got a little distracted. He said it is better to have a permanent place that is memorable, but here everything is different. Whoever is first takes it. He asked if everything looks the same as last time. Then he added that the quality of the knives and daggers is higher, and fewer materials are needed. He plans to sell them for 30,000 crowns. Alicia nodded. She understood everything. At that moment, she began loudly greeting passers-by, urging them to look at their goods. Alicia sighed. As expected, attracting attention would be difficult. The boy agreed, thinking that although her voice sounded clear, people still did not approach. He thought that he had no business acumen at all. Poor Alicia. And suddenly someone called his name. The girl said that he should speak with pride. His goods were excellent, so his behavior should be confident. The hero smiled. She was right. They began to call customers together. The young man looked at the clock. An hour had already passed. He asked Alicia if she was tired. She replied that everything was fine. She was trying. At that moment, a voice sounded. Two boys approached closer. They greeted. One of them said that he had brought the promised companion, Wiser, also an adventurer. Now they were on the same team. By the way, he forgot to introduce himself last time. His name is Ibis. The hero sincerely thanked and also gave his name. Meanwhile, Wiser began to examine the goods. The boy with ears on his head asked to see one sword. He was allowed. Ibis noted that the sword bought here was incredibly comfortable. He added that it was light, sharp, perfectly fit in the hand, incomparable to his old one. The hero thanked, and he was happy to hear that. Ibis said that thanks to this sword, he rose to rank E in a week. Everyone in the guild was impressed. Now he was like a local star there. The hero sincerely congratulated him. He asked if it was not his own abilities that helped after all, but Ibis replied no. At that moment, Wiser inquired how much the sword he liked cost. The hero asked if the price of 40,000 crowns would be acceptable. The boy blushed awkwardly and asked if 30 would be possible. The guy agreed, but asked in return if he liked the quality to recommend it to friends. And he heard, agreed. Ibis looked over the counter and noticed the knives. He was explained that they were versatile for fighting and processing prey. This idea fascinated him. He inquired about the price. He heard 30,000 for each. He suggested lowering it a bit, immediately apologizing for the question. The hero thought there was a chance to bargain. This is the maximum price. He said aloud, since you came with a friend, Amori, then let it be 20,000. They rejoiced. The boy also asked if he could see the sword for processing meat. The hero took the sword, looked around, and said that the spell on it had worn off a little. He asked if he knew how enchantment works. The boy replied that he did. Blacksmiths apply them for enhancement. He explained, every sword has a magical code, and this one is already fading. The boy asked if it could be fixed. The hero nodded, of course. He is a blacksmith after all. He will renew the enchantment for free the first time. When he finished, he reported, everything is ready, now there will be no problems. Next time it will cost 5,000, so it's better to be careful. He explained that such services are also offered, so if anything happens, they should contact them. Ivis promised that he would definitely come if he earns well. They said goodbye. Alicia thanked for the purchase. Ivis replied but wanted to know more. Who was this girl? The hero called her assistant, Ali. Ivis asked directly, isn't she his beloved by any chance? The hero only sighed inwardly. Why is he asking such a thing? In fact, she is his fiancée, but only according to the legend. So the hero did not want to disclose this. Ivis said that everything was clear. It must be wonderful to work next to a beloved. He himself dreams of traveling with a dear adventuress. The hero wished him luck, although inwardly he did not understand what was wrong with this guy. At that moment, Weiser placed his hand on his shoulder and thanked him again. The hero smiled inwardly. He could hardly believe that he managed to earn such an amount. All the efforts of the past week are beginning to bear fruit. He turned to Alicia to say something, but fell silent. Her face had a strange expression. She said that she was his fiancée, so she could tell the truth. The boy asked, well, what if her identity is exposed? After all, the engagement is not real. Alicia said that today they succeeded. The sales were excellent. The hero agreed. He hopes that those two will achieve a lot with his weapon. He himself is curious how their fate will turn out. Time passed, and after the sale, those two could not sell anything else. The hero thought that it was just bad luck. It is important not to rush and to proceed gradually. And at that moment, Alicia called out. A new buyer appeared. A blond man in a hat approached them and said that he noticed their swords and knives. He touched his chin. The hero confirmed, everything is correct. He offered to take a look. The man took one knife, pulled it out of the sheath, and asked, is this really a Class E ruddy? The guy confirmed, yes. He thought to himself, this client looks like an experienced trader. And indeed, he was immediately interested. The blonde said he had been in this business for a long time. The quality was so high that you wouldn't say at once, a Class E redhead. He looked everything over again and said he needed both a sword and a knife. They started bargaining. The hero wanted to sell for 50,000, but the buyer was a skilled negotiator. The guy gave up. He offered 35,000 for everything, but asked in return to recommend him to others. The client agreed. In the end, the hero sold for less than he wanted, as if he tore a piece from his heart. And then the client said, the hardest thing will be to forget not the goods, but his assistant and the mask. The hero thanked and asked if the mask was too noticeable. He replied that it was exactly what attracted attention, and also the girl's voice. Alicia thanked with a smile. The blonde waved goodbye, saying they would meet again. The hero nodded in response and sincerely thanked for the purchase. The guy turned to the girl and admitted that it was all thanks to her. She replied that on the contrary, thanks to him, but it seems that this very client will bring many more new ones. The hero said he would be happy if that happened. Today he sold 2 swords and 2 knives. The total profit was 85,000 crowns. This is a huge leap compared to last week. Later he brought the earnings to Mr. Gural. He said that this time it was more successful, although there are enough blacksmiths in the area capable of earning such an amount. The hero mentally admitted the amount was not so incredible. He was still too weak. He thanked aloud and was already about to leave, but he was stopped. The hero asked if something had happened. Then the man said that tomorrow a blacksmith named Robert would visit them with a certain proposal. Mr. Gural reported that in the future Robert will inherit the title and become the vice lord of the house. The hero replied that he understood everything. He thought that Robert was one of the contenders for Alicia's hand, and she had said that such company was only a burden for her. It turns out Robert is incapable of handling his duties. The man continued to tell, noting that Robert is very ambitious. The hero only politely nodded, while the gentleman continued to praise that man. At some point, the hero dared to ask, what is all this conversation about? The gentleman answered simply, Robert has a very high libido. The hero mentally barely restrained laughter. Goral said this with such a stone face, as if he were talking about politics. He admitted that Robert once directly told him that he had designs on Alicia. But it seems she did not reciprocate precisely because of his persistence. Goral noted that even if Robert seemed sincere, it is not worth showing him even a shred of disrespect. He had ambitions but lacked talent, so other men will appear. The gentleman added that he worries whether Alicia will truly be happy with him, and in this regard the main hero looks much more reliable. He thanked him, but mentally admitted that he was not at all like a ladies' man. Goral was right. He really had no experience with girls. Goral warned that nothing has been decided yet. He is looking for a golden mean between fulfilling duties and his daughter's happiness. The hero thought that before him was truly a wonderful father. Although his position obliges him to worry about a profitable marriage, he sincerely cares about Alicia's happiness. And the hero promised not to let him down. He only asked, "Try." The hero bitterly thought that his heart was in place, but his actions were deceit. The gentleman places hopes on him, protects him, and he only hides and lies. But no matter what, if he wants to keep this position, he must become even better, no matter how difficult it is. At that moment, he returned to the room where Alicia was waiting for him. She asked if the father had not fully recognized him. The boy confirmed. He said that his sales level was still insufficient. Alicia replied that they had tried so hard. The hero mentally noted, today she was dressed somewhat lighter than usual. She could have been more careful. After all, she is one of the most beautiful and noble girls in this world. He thought that Mr. Goral was probably worried about the same thing. Then he stopped himself. Enough of thinking about such vulgarities. He said aloud that currently he can only trade once a week. To appear at the market more often, he urgently needs his own shop. But even in this case, clients will not rush immediately. First, you need to make a name for yourself among the merchants. Alicia agreed. It is expensive, and you cannot do without regular clients. The hero thought that there was still a lot of work to do, but if it was all for Alicia, he had to endure it. Otherwise, he wouldn't even be able to be a cover. If he doesn't manage, another candidate will appear. He said aloud that tomorrow an aristocrat named Robert will arrive. Alicia replied that she knows, and it seems she will not be able to avoid his company. The hero apologized to her. He admitted, playing her fiancé, he should have restrained other suitors. But he failed. Alicia said, "Don't worry." She explained that she felt uncomfortable talking to people like Robert and asked, when the meeting ends, can she come to him? The hero replied, he would be in the workshop. She could come anytime. The girl thanked him. Then she asked, did something happen? Because he is behaving differently than usual. The hero pondered her words. If you think about it, she has been sitting nearby in that form for quite a long time, as if deliberately waiting for something. But what exactly? The boy asked what she meant, while mentally guessing what she wanted. Her seductive appearance was unsettling. Could it be that she was simply testing his endurance? Alicia thought for a moment and replied that she had heard, if you dress like that, men will definitely fall in love. So she wanted to check it out. The hero immediately asked who told her that. In response, he heard, Leafy. He mentally dubbed her an evil genius. She wants to hear his opinion to later use it against other suitors. The boy said he was not speaking for himself, but in general. But to be honest, if she were his wife, then by now they would already be. But he did not have time to finish. The girl interrupted, asked what exactly they would be doing. He immediately waved it off. Nothing of the sort. And she, does that mean he is in love? The hero explained that he meant all men in general. She nodded, then directly asked if he liked her dress. Alicia admitted that nature had not given her much, and directly asked if that was a problem for him, and the hero did not understand where she was heading. She asked again, did he really like the big ones? What was his opinion about her body? In his thoughts, he prayed for her to stop. Why was she doing this to him? A new day came. The blacksmiths discussed the news. Morgan had now become the personal blacksmith of the commander of the knights, so the position of chief blacksmith would soon be vacant. Would any of them apply? Meanwhile, Morgan himself thought, today the commander would evaluate the enchantment he had placed on the sword. He hoped for a reward, wishing to finally occupy the prestigious position. There was a knock at the door. A knight entered, said he had not seen them for a long time. Morgan thought this was a hint about a promotion, but the knight asked, is Faik here? Morgan became nervous. They are interested in that boy again. He answered aloud that Feek is still expected. The knight nodded and said he wanted to talk about the sword that Feik left him. Morgan immediately interrupted. He said that Feik is on vacation, so he temporarily replaced him and took on his duties. The knight briefly replied that now everything is clear. Then Morgan asked, "And the sword, is everything okay?" But the knight flared up with anger. Everyone in the forge froze in shock when he swung the sword, and it simply crumbled into pieces. He instantly jumped up to Morgan, grabbed him by the collar, and pressed the sword to his neck. His voice was cold. This was very serious. Morgan asked in panic what was wrong. The knight replied, his personal blacksmith checked the enchantments and called this work pathetic. According to the knight, if this sword is used at full power, it will simply fall apart. He does not want to deal with such an incompetent craftsman. He clearly said, the sword must be made by Feik. After that, the knight asked again, where is Feik? And exactly where is he resting? Morgan was scared to the core. He had never been scolded so loudly in his life. Usually mentioning his influential father made everyone grovel. Other blacksmiths reported that Feek no longer works here. The knight was surprised. How so? After all, that boy is so talented that even his master wanted to meet him. Morgan mentally did not believe that Feek could be so capable. It is unreal. Could his own work be worse? He tried to lie, saying that Feek left on his own. The knight asked again, on his own? They confirmed it to him, apologized for the quality of the sword, and informed him that the boy left. The knight closed his eyes and asked, is it known where he went? No, he understood everything. Since then, they haven't fulfilled a single order. The boy shouted at them to finally come to their senses, start casting spells correctly, and prepare the weapons. Otherwise, the knights will have nothing to fight with. And indeed, the knights will soon be left without weapons. All hopes were placed on Feik, but for some reason, he never returned. The knight asked, why are they still standing? Didn't he make himself clear? The blacksmiths assured, everything is understood. They will start working immediately. All the forge workers looked at him with horror. The knight looked around and sternly ordered, as soon as you find out where Feik is, report immediately. After everything, the knight left the forge. Meanwhile, the workers were confusedly asking what to do with this pile of swords. And that's not all. New weapons arrived daily. Morgan sternly replied, stop chatting and get to work quickly. Only one thought was spinning in Morgan's head. All this is because of one scoundrel. He shouted angrily that he must find a way to finish the work on time. Meanwhile, the knight who left the forge walked with a heavy feeling. Something is wrong with these court blacksmiths. His instincts clearly suggested this. At that moment, another warrior addressed him, saying there is a matter that requires his attention. The knight asked what it was about and heard, it's a batch of swords they recently received. No new weapons had arrived for a long time. They had to survive on the old ones. But the magic on them is slowly deteriorating. The new supply partially solves the problem, but the enchantments are of miserable quality. The knight said he needed to check the magical code. The blacksmith warned, last time he felt ill. But he replied, this time he will be more careful. The knight thought that he still lacked the strength to comprehend the magical code imposed by Feik. The attempt to read the higher-level spell caused serious physical discomfort. Attempting to analyze Feik's spell literally turned it inside out. It meant only one thing. Feik's level was incomparably higher. This time the spells were cast not by him, but by the court blacksmiths. And yet, if you don't count Morgan, these were supposed to be the best craftsmen in the country. And as soon as the knight began the inspection, he got indignant. These were not spells, but childish scribbles. A spell of such quality only destroys the sword from within. The blond man turned to the blacksmith and asked if he had given these swords to anyone else. He denied it and admitted they really are terrible. The knight approved the decision. You cannot work with such weapons. He looked at the sword in his hands and thought, this nonsense will only ruin the weapon, and then he will have to completely rewrite the magic code from scratch. He did not expect that those people would disgrace their work so much. They are supposed to be the best in the whole country. The blonde asked if there were any quality swords left in the forge. He replied, there are a few, but not enough to fulfill the plan to destroy the monsters. In this case, priority goes to the recruits who do not yet have their own weapons, but they should use them carefully. And the knight himself will go to another blacksmith who once made his sword. His name is Mr. Figure, a master with a difficult character. The knight doubted that he would agree. but now he is his only hope. The knight thought that all these stupid blacksmiths were to blame. Later, he will initiate an internal investigation. But first of all, he must find out where Fake is now. The royal court is a gigantic closed mechanism. There is always room for shadowy deals and hidden decisions. And newcomers are trained too harshly. He has no doubts. More is happening behind the scenes than it seems. Constant supplies of extraordinary weapons in recent years. What if all these swords were made by Fake himself? If so, even an ordinary observer would see his talent as obvious. How many blacksmiths in the country can combine such quality and quantity? The knight said bitterly, Fake's departure will set their progress back by 50 years. At that moment, his personal blacksmith approached him again. The blonde thought that the court blacksmiths in Morgan were definitely hiding something. He knew it, felt it in every cell. At that time, Fake stood by the window watching the newcomer. He recognized Robert, a stately man, and he could do nothing about himself. He was overwhelmed by envy. He hesitated. Should he greet him? Probably not. Robert was also a contender. His appearance could cause unnecessary tension. It was best to spend the day in the workshop. But later fate brought them face to face. Robert stood before him, and behind him, Alicia. She apologized. Robert insisted on meeting him at least once. Robert immediately stated that he understood. He was Alicia's fiancé. The hero shook his hand and greeted him, introducing himself. Robert also responded politely, giving his name in return. Robert firmly took Fake's hand and began to examine it carefully. The hero asked in surprise what had happened. Robert replied that everything was fine. He was simply struck by the beauty of his hands. They were unusually strong, the skin dense and tough. Then Robert turned his gaze to Alicia and asked if she always hid behind someone else's shoulder, and added they hadn't seen each other for a very long time. And back then she also stood behind the servant's shoulder when they discussed books in the garden. He even felt sorry. Alicia quietly apologized. Robert looked carefully at the girl, and suddenly something flashed in his eyes. He quietly said that she had grown up a lot. Alicia asked in surprise if that was really so. Robert turned to the hero and unexpectedly asked if he liked it here. For Fike, this sounded strange, so he immediately looked at the girl. This question threw him off balance. It seemed even Alicia herself felt awkward. But the hero could not let Robert suspect that their relationship was fake. Moreover, he had no right to yield to this man, regardless of whether she loves him. So he loudly declared that he madly loves Alicia and is simply losing his mind over her. The girl froze in amazement, looking at him. Meanwhile, Robert addressed her by name and asked if she would allow him to speak with her alone. When they were left alone, Robert noticed the sword and politely asked for permission to examine it. The hero agreed, secretly pleased Robert was a talented blacksmith. He carefully raised the sword, touched the blade, and looking thoughtfully around asked if it was magical. Then he added that the sword really turned out wonderful. The hero thanked him. He confirmed that the sword was forged from magical material. Robert nodded. Everything became clear. The sword was skillfully made, and the final enchantments were applied with mastery. Robert put the sword back in place and said with a smile that sometimes he says too much. It should not be taken seriously. The hero immediately asked what exactly it was about. He approached the table, took a knife, and waved it off as if to say nonsense. He had never been an outstanding blacksmith and did not even have a particular passion for this craft. The hero was surprised. Robert continued, among blacksmiths he considers himself mediocre. That is why he is here not as a craftsman, but as an aristocrat. Robert noticed that Lady Alicia is a very beautiful girl. Many men would like to see her as their fiancée. She is beautiful, like a delicate flower. But unfortunately, she is growing up. There was an unexpected regret in his words. The hero did not understand what this was about and asked if Robert realized that she was only 18. But he did not listen. He was remembering what she used to be like. She was so tiny that it seemed an embrace could break her. The hero did not grasp what this meant, but Robert repeated again, she has grown up. Lady Alicia is undoubtedly a beautiful young woman, but that is not enough for him. He likes younger girls. Robert even cried, saying if Alicia were 20 centimeters shorter, with smaller breasts, that would be a different matter. Her current appearance does not cause any trembling in him. The hero listened to these words with surprise. What is he even saying? Could it be that her elegance is not embodied precisely in this appearance? He stopped the flow of his thoughts and asked Robert directly, where are you leading this? He answered simply, Now he does not feel the former passion for her. The hero nodded and clarified, "So you are no longer interested in her?" Robert answered honestly, "Yes, exactly." He admitted, he has neither a title nor excessive ambitions. He wants to become an independent warrior and strives for something more than just marriage. It seems the Barnasto family wants to see a blacksmith as a son-in-law, but he prefers hunting monsters. However, for appearances, he must maintain this image. His parents are too persistent. Robert suddenly approached, grabbed the hero by the shoulder, and said he sincerely wished him luck, and asked to keep their conversation secret from the Barnasto family. Fake looked at him and said he understood. Robert rejoiced, saying, "Wonderful." And also, he liked one sword. He asked if it was possible to buy it. The hero answered affirmatively. Then Robert clarified, "What is its price?" The hero thought that this sword was of higher quality than the one he recently sold to Ivas, and the hilt was decorated more richly. So he asked aloud if 10,000 crowns would be enough. Robert agreed. The hero noted that he named a rather high price, but after all, before him was an aristocrat, and in his hands was a box with inventory. Such a box holds a certain number of items and costs as much as the annual income of an ordinary person. This is true luxury. Robert handed him the money and asked to check. Fate confirmed that everything was in order. Robert reminded him of the request and said that maybe in the future he would bring him more weapons. The hero replied that he would wait for him. Robert smiled. From now on, they could do without formalities. He wants to become his friend. At first, the main hero wanted to object, but Robert's gaze stopped him. He seriously asked to take care of Alicia from that day on. His words radiated sincerity. After some time, they returned to Alicia. Seeing the fake sword in Robert's hands, the girl asked if that was the one he chose. He confirmed and said he had one more word for the hero. Robert noted that Fake seemed to be an extraordinarily talented blacksmith, so he bought this sword as a sample. He hopes not to lose contact, and the hero responded in kind. After that, Robert said goodbye, waved his hand, wished them all the best, and said he would visit Lady Alicia again. The hero sighed with relief and said that it seemed everything went well. Alicia praised him and thanked him for today, to which he replied that she did great too. He inquired if there would be other guests. The girl answered affirmatively. Then the hero said that there would be many such situations. Robert turned out to be not bad, but who knows what will happen next. Alicia asked if she could also inspect the goods. The hero said they would start with the highest quality items, 3 knives and 3 swords of class D+. Robert recently bought exactly such a sword. Next in line are swords and knives of class D, 3 pieces each. Eva's took exactly these. There is also a class E knife and several class F items. He already has a decent assortment for all tastes. He plans to sell the F class to adventurers with a limited budget. It seems the market is filled with new faces today. This time, he has prepared affordable options. The hero said that this time, they have a lot of goods. Today, he is going to bargain. The most important thing now is to convince the buyers to make the first move. He decided that today he would give it his all. Alicia supported him. The trading began. They carefully watched what was happening around. The hero noticed that there were more people. Alicia happily agreed and said they needed to speak louder. And at that moment, one of the boys noticed their bench. The hero remembered that in the morning, he had already sold an F-class knife and 1 sword. This buyer offered 12,000 crowns. He accepted the amount without hesitation. Although, of course, he wanted to get 15,000. This guy bargained much better than him. In fact, he sincerely wanted to support and provide for the adventurers. If it is possible to establish communication, it may develop into a permanent cooperation, like with Evas. He considers it an investment in the future. At that very moment, a familiar voice sounded. So many years, so many winters. They immediately raised their heads and saw a familiar merchant. The hero gladly greeted him. He asked how they were doing. The hero immediately remembered. This is a traveling merchant. He hoped to see him again. And indeed, his happiness was unmistakable. The merchant said that his sword turned out to be surprisingly successful and useful on the road. Light, strong, much more convenient than expected, and at the same time very durable. The hero was comforted by his words and thanked him. The merchant added, "The sword has high magical conductivity. It is hard to believe that it is made from class E ore." Fake was surprised by such an assessment and sincerely rejoiced that the sword was so liked. And the seller added that the weapon even strengthens during battle thanks to magic. An enchanted sword is a true wonder. The blonde said he wanted to buy more today, The hero did not hide his surprise. The merchant added that he would like to take a little of everything if possible. Just one look, according to him, makes it clear. The quality of the product has become higher than last time. He praised the swords and knives, then asked if he could take a closer look. The hero thought that he was looking exactly at Class D+. Obviously, this guy has excellent taste. After the inspection, the merchant chose several items, thanked him, and asked how much it would cost. The hero replied that it was 12 units in total knives and swords. The merchant looked at everything once more and said he would take it all. The hero was stunned by this decisiveness. He sincerely thanked for the choice and asked Alicia to pack everything. The girl smiled and agreed. Regarding the price, the hero said they agreed on 500,000 crowns. Both looked satisfied with the deal. He understood that trading with the traveler was much more difficult than with Robert, but this time everything worked out, even better than expected. The merchant thanked for the help, and then remembered that he had not introduced himself yet. His name was Rick. Looking at the handle, Rick noticed that the engraving was fake. He asked if there would be any objections if he used it. The hero replied that he did not mind. The merchant said he would be extremely grateful to him, and then thanked him once again. The hero lowered his head and replied that he was also sincerely grateful to Rick. Smiling, he said it was time to say goodbye, but they would meet again. After these words, he walked away. At that moment, Alicia exclaimed excitedly that Fake succeeded. The merchant bought so much their dream came true. She is happy because she believed in his weapon. The hero thanked her, said that her faith gave him confidence, and laughed. He promised that he would continue to work in the same spirit. Unfortunately, all the goods were sold out, probably thanks to the wide assortment by classes. In the future, he will need to take this into account. Later, when they were returning home, Alicia noted that a lot was sold today. Fake replied that it was all thanks to the traveling merchant Rick, but also thanks to her. He thanked the girl for everything, and she replied with a smile that it was all because his goods were truly of high quality. Suddenly, someone called him by name. It was Ibis and Vezer. They hadn't seen each other for a long time. They were glad to meet and asked how he was doing. Fake greeted them. Friends asked if they were heading home now. He answered affirmatively. Then Vezer addressed them by name. The guy said that his sword is simply wonderful, incredibly comfortable, and even exceeded all his expectations. The hero rejoiced at such words and thanked once again. At that moment, Ibis said that he had a request for him. He inquired whether the hero accepts individual orders. The Fake was stunned by the unexpectedness of this question. He answered that yes, and asked what exactly interested them. Ibis said that the sword is very convenient, but he needs something shorter. Is that possible? The hero replied that he understood. Probably a dagger would suit him better. Vezer, in turn, said he wanted something longer and wider. Fake replied that it is possible, but first it is necessary to clarify the details. Individual orders cost more. It is better to meet separately and discuss everything. Friends could not wait but agreed to the proposal. The hero thought that finally the time had come for personal orders and he wants to start as soon as possible. Ibis asked when it would be convenient to meet. Fake replied that any time was fine. Then the guy suggested meeting tomorrow near the guild and asked if he wanted to go on an adventure with them. At first the friends were surprised, but then they agreed. Fake explained that he wanted to see them in action to better understand which weapon would suit them. He will also have to visit the armory and find something similar as a sample. The friends were glad about this approach and agreed. After this, Ibis and Vezer waved to them, smiling sincerely, and said they were looking forward to tomorrow's meeting. Alicia asked if they would go on an adventure together tomorrow. The hero inquired if she wanted to join. The girl answered affirmatively. She had heard that he knew how to fight. Fake explained that before becoming a court blacksmith, he gathered all the materials himself. Alicia said she wanted to see it. He noted that it was dangerous, but she assured him that she had learned fencing and would not be a burden. The hero said he understood. If anything happens, he will protect her. She must be by his side. Alicia blushed and asked to repeat it once more. He was surprised. Why did she need this? She said it was so pleasant and asked to repeat it again. Fake awkwardly replied that he was already a little embarrassed, and inwardly wondered, why did she suddenly? The hero also blushed, but still said, she must be near. He will protect her. The girl became even redder because of this. Fake asked if that wasn't too awkward. Then he inquired, if he asked her to say something similar, what would she answer? The girl asked what exactly he wanted to hear. He thought to himself that he would like to hear something like, I like you, but he didn't dare. That would be too direct. Out loud, he said that he wanted to hear from her words that she wants to be near. Alicia asked in surprise if he really wanted to hear that from her, specifically. He wondered if he had rushed and if he had put her in an uncomfortable position. But he said out loud that it was not about that. He just said it without thinking. Hearing this, Alicia suddenly became upset. The hero began to say something to explain why he said it. But the girl was no longer listening. She turned around and silently walked away. The hero was stunned. The hero hurriedly asked why she was leaving and asked her to wait. The girl turned and said that if he wanted to hear those words, she would have said them. Fake thought that at least she didn't make him repeat again. Even that was enough to understand something for himself. The next moment, the hero was again in Mr. Gural's office. He reported that today's profit amounted to 512,000 crowns. The man immediately asked for details. Fake explained that today he presented weapons of various classes, and Rick, a traveling merchant, was delighted and bought everything wholesale. Goral nodded. If Rick already liked the goods, then probably he will become a regular client. Fake thanked for the excellent conditions that he created, but Goral reminded that the boy was still on probation. No approval had been given yet. Then the man remembered that he heard from Alicia. Is it true that they are going on an adventure tomorrow? The hero confirmed and explained that he is setting out together with adventurers who made individual orders. He wants to see them in battle. His goal is to create the perfect weapon for each style. Only by observing them can a true masterpiece be made. Goral noted his meticulous approach. Fake replied that he is making every effort to ensure the highest quality. The man stated that he would provide escort. The observation will be from a distance, but if anything happens to Alicia, there will be serious consequences. He also inquired about the boy's combat experience. Fake replied that before working in the palace, he gathered all the materials himself and handles low-ranked monsters quite well. Goral said he was glad to hear that. He added that maybe he would somehow test Fake's strength. He smiled and said that he would show it without problems if there is such a need. Later, the boy returned to his chambers. He hadn't fought for a long time, but the feeling of strength remained. He was sure everything would go well. A new day came. The hero and Alicia met friends who were already waiting. They shone with enthusiasm and suggested setting out. Ibis addressed them with a proposal to abandon formality and communicate more simply. The hero agreed if it did not bother them. Then he turned to Ibis, asking him to call himself more simply, but he replied that it was too much for him. He would not be able to. The hero asked about their plans. The boys said they took a task from the guild, hunting monsters in this forest. Fake immediately clarified that the hunt would be right here. Ibis became more serious and explained that wolves, goblins, and their leader live in the forest. Vizer added that deeper in the forest, one can also encounter orcs, but there should be no stronger creatures nearby. Fake said that they do not plan to go far. One of the guys said that their goal is to show their fighting style, so he asked to watch carefully. The hero nodded. Everything is clear. The guys went ahead and Fake with Alicia, behind. The girl touched her chest and closed her eyes, then asked if he was okay, if something hurt. The hero replied that everything was fine. He was just casting a spell on himself. The girl asked in surprise, does he really use magic on himself? Fake explained that it is something like enhancement. It strengthens the body and allows tracking its condition, just like tempering a blade, carefully and without harm to health. He thought to himself that this way he could better protect the girl, and aloud he said, if something is wrong, let her say immediately. She agreed. Ibis looked around and teased them. It's clear they are not wasting time. He addressed Mr. Fake. He asked not to tease, but the guy replied with a smile that he did not mean to. They just look cute together. Then he turned to the girl. Can she fight? She answered that only for self-defense. Ibis said that in that case, maybe he would have to protect the hero. He did not object. Then the guy joked that she should lean her shoulder against him. Ibis continued fantasizing how such touches would turn into passionate embraces, but he did not manage to finish. Vizer stopped him in time. He advised not to pay attention to this joker. Ibis had already asked, why are the beastmen so strong? Fake smiled and replied that everything is under control. After a few minutes, Alicia timidly tugged at his clothes and asked if she could stay close. The hero smiled, of course, but reminded her that it was dangerous here. He gently embraced her, and his heart pounded wildly in his chest. In this forest, he must be especially careful. After all, he is now responsible not only for himself. At that very moment, Vizer felt something. He abruptly stopped everyone and warned, Wolves are approaching. The hero and Alicia were ordered to step back. Weser glanced at Ivis and nodded. They had to act. In a moment, both rushed forward toward the pack of predators. Feek thought this was happening incredibly fast. Ivis dodged the wolf's strike. It got angry and lunged again. But the boy was already to the side. With a swift movement, Ivis turned, raised his sword, and, muttering, "The first is mine," instantly cut through the enemy. The rest of the wolves froze in horror, but behind them Vizier had already appeared. Wasting no time, he reported that the second was also ready and sheathed his sword. With a scream, he cut the beast's body in half, and then another one. His blade seemed to flash with power. In a few seconds, it was all over. Weiser turned to Ivis. "Well done." Fake stood stunned. The hero realized that while Ivis was distracting, Vizier was delivering a fatal blow. They have coordinated tactics. The speed of Ivis, his graceful movements, striking, and the strength of Vizier, like a beast, surpasses a human. The beastmen have a huge advantage. Ivis asked how he liked the spectacle. The hero replied, "Wonderful." He was already thinking about what weapon to create for them. Together they were invincible. Lightning speed and ruthless strength. Fake did not believe that there was a monster in this forest capable of defeating them. Then he cautiously asked, "Can I try too?" The boys exchanged surprised glances. But soon they reached a new clearing and hid in the bushes. Two goblins stood before them. Fake asked if there were really only two. He was told they had not been noticed yet. "Perfect," he whispered and raised the stone. He threw him with such force that the first goblin immediately fell unconscious. The second one roared and lunged at him with a wooden stick. Fike instantly drew his sword and delivered a precise strike. Everything lasted only a few seconds. Ivis gasped. The power was incredible. Fake shrugged it off. He was just used to it. He once gathered materials for the forge himself, so fights were nothing new. Alicia blushed. She looked at him with a sparkle in her eyes. "You are incredible." The boy blushed and thanked her. Ivis winked. It seems Lady Alicia liked it too. To avoid blushing even more, Fake quickly changed the subject, asked to show a few more techniques, and then they would return to the workshop. He carefully watched the battles. Ivisu needed a short and light sword for his maneuverability, and Vezeru a long and heavy blade, which he could use to full effect. But before getting down to business, it is necessary to find out the exact wishes. Returning to the workshop, Fake asked Ivis how he felt about short swords. He replied that even these short ones are too long and heavy. Fake asked about the daggers. In response, he heard that the blade is too short, but Ivis added that the weight of the dagger is perfect. Fake concluded he needs a special sword, light but not too short. Then he turned to Vezer. He said that only one thing mattered to him, that the sword could knock anyone off the road. The hero thanked both for their frankness. Now he had a general idea of what their weapons should be like. Ivis thanked him in response and asked, how much would such swords cost? Fake thought for a moment. This is a custom order, expensive materials. He did not want to undervalue his work, but these were his first clients. So he proposed this. If the result suits them, then the sword for Ivis would cost 40,000 crowns. For Vesser, 60,000. Vesser replied in surprise that it was even cheaper than he expected. But Fake clarified. The price includes the fact that they would give their old swords for melting down. Without this, it would be another 140,000. The guy nodded. Everything was clear. For such a discount, it was not a pity to part with the old blade. Fake said they agreed. By the start of the next auction, the weapons would be ready. He thanked the guys for today, and they in response said they were looking forward to his creation. He replied that it was wonderful. He would start already from tomorrow morning. The guys wished him luck, to which he sincerely thanked them. A new day came. The hero was already in the forge. Today he decided to take on the sword for Ivis. He would start with it. His weapon had to be something between a dagger and a short sword. To combine the weight of a dagger with the length of a sword? This was a challenge, but he had to try. He would have to reduce the amount of magic during forging, but then the blade would not be very durable. But in such a matter, balance was important. Ivis and Vezer were true battle partners. They would have to go through many more battles, so the weapon had to be not just sharp, but reliable. To achieve this, he would have to give his all. At first, he melted the ore, forged a metal plate, and when the mold was ready, he began the enchantment. Magic will become the basis of strength, but it is important not to overdo it. The spells here are rather for correcting the magical code. It is easy to disrupt it with a hammer blow, but with the help of runes, it will not be difficult to restore. If this process is repeated several times, the magical code integrates better into the blade, like muscles in the body that become stronger after heavy loads. When the mold took the desired shape, it was time for firing. He kindled the fire and threw the blank inside. After a few minutes, the burning was over. The hero examined the blade, just what was needed. He took up sharpening. Usually he was guided by intuition, but this time, an exception. Maximum precision was required. After sharpening, he moved on to crafting the handle. When the work was finished, Fake went outside and decided to test the sword in action. The blade turned out sharper than he expected, and that was without additional spells. With them, it would become even more dangerous. He sincerely hopes that this blade will help Ibis reach the heights and preserve his cheerfulness. Soon the sword was finally ready. The weapon came out single-edged, slightly resembling a falchion. The hero decided that for Ibis, one sharp edge would be quite enough. Medium length, shorter than a regular sword, but heavier than a dagger. The perfect balance. This was exactly the result he aimed for. Fake wiped the sweat. He was exhausted. Only the knives remained to be made, and half the work would be behind him. He did not expect one order to take so much strength, but this was his first commissioned sword, and he really wants Ibis to be satisfied. At that moment, there was a knock at the door. Alicia asked if she could come in. The hero allowed it. She noticed how tired he was and inquired if he managed to do at least something from the order. He replied that he started with a sword for Ibis and asked if she wanted to take a look. She immediately said that the sword combines strength and elegance, especially thanks to magic. Alicia added enthusiastically, "This is a true work of art." Fake thanked awkwardly. He tried hard for a reason. At least one blade exhausted him. She explained that she was just nervous, so she came to him. The hero asked how much time had passed. He remembered that he started in the morning, and the forging felt like it lasted no less than 5 hours. Alicia asked if he wanted to eat. The boy waved it off. He didn't want to eat, but to sleep. Very much. Then she sat on the floor and put her hands on her knees. She said that if he was so tired, he should lie down and rest on her lap. He was embarrassed, started to object, but she insisted rest was necessary. The hero hesitantly agreed and laid his head on her lap. He thought how soft it was, but he could not rest. Anxiety prevented him from fully relaxing. Alicia asked about the plans for the day. Fake replied, "We'll do a few things for sale and then finish. Tomorrow we'll start on the order for Weezer." She suggested lying down a little longer. He thought he was engaged in a cause capable of protecting those dear to him. He lies on the knees of his beloved, and this makes him the happiest in the world. A new day has come. Fake thought that unlike Ibis's sword, the weapon for Weezer would require much more magical ore. That is why it costs more. First, he created the form using earth magic, a wide metal plate. Then he filled it with molten magical ore and let it cool. After this, heating again, as in the case with the sword for Ibis. All procedures need to be repeated again. With the help of a hammer, he began to shape the desired form, then raised the temperature again. He repeated this cycle several times, approaching the ideal. The hero pondered whether to enchant the sword, but then decided to first determine the final form. Unlike Ibis, Weezer possesses any type of blade. That is why he wanted to create a double-edged sword for him. In this case, a long and wide blade would be perfect, just the kind that Weezer wanted. His sword is not just meant to wound the enemy. It must destroy. In their duet, Ibis distracts attention, and Weezer delivers the deadly blow. Therefore, the blade must be massive and extremely sharp. He decided to first embed magical information, and then forge. By repeating the steel tempering process, he will be able to approach perfection. Thanks to the magical iron from the Ore of Arai, the sword will become even better. But forging such a gigantic thing is not easy. Without a self-curse, it simply would not have held. Eventually, Fake reached the desired shape and weight. Only then did he realize it was already noon. As he thought, the work on this sword would take longer than on Ibis's sword. He needed to rest a little. After a short rest, he returned to work and labored until evening. When everything was finished, he looked completely exhausted. The blade turned out incredibly heavy. Tempering it was not easy. And since it is a long sword, sharpening it with the help of wind magic required a lot of effort. The hero thought that the work was much more difficult than he expected. Probably it was worth setting a higher price for the order. The time has come for the final run before the concluding spells. He went outside again to test the sword in action. Fake thought that such a sword could kill a monster with one strike. Thanks to the double-edged blade and huge weight, the blade can cut through anything. The final touch remains. It is necessary to select such spells that will reveal the combat potential of Visor. Finally, everything was ready. He spent the whole day in the workshop before the sword became perfect. As soon as he finished, he fell to the floor and whispered that it had finally happened. After that, he wondered if the boys would like the new weapon. He couldn't wait to hand them the blades. At that moment, Alicia tried to lift Weezer's sword. She said it was too heavy. It was simply impossible to move it from its place. Fake replied that he had created it according to Weezer's build and wishes, then asked Alicia to extend her hand. He cast a temporary spell on it that enhanced her physical abilities. Now she would be able to lift it. The girl tried and indeed managed. Alicia said the sword was really heavy. There are only 2 people in the world capable of creating something like this using Magicore. Fake was surprised. Could it really be true? She said she had met many blacksmiths, but only a few had the power to create such things. The girl smiled and said that he was an incredible blacksmith. The hero thanked her, but added that he still had room to grow. She reminded him that he had worked in the forge for 2 days without stopping, then asked if they would go have dinner. He agreed, explaining that he was terribly hungry. She smiled. Today he could eat as much as he wanted. Meanwhile, a knight returned to Morgan's forge. He asked what their forge was even doing. Morgan asked in surprise what exactly he meant. The young man explained that the reason for his visit was the sword entrusted to him. He asked why the work had been done so terribly. Morgan was stunned and silent. Could there really have been problems with such a beautiful and seemingly professionally enchanted blade? The man explained that every evening their guild receives enchanted swords. The forge works almost around the clock. It requires extraordinary effort. Morgan added that their forge has long been working without rest. This art requires colossal investments, strength, and endurance. He even suggested that the knights treat their swords more carefully. But the knight reminded him, it was their forge that 3 years ago proposed to supply new weapons monthly. Morgan pondered. Yes, that's right. When Fake arrived at the palace and finally settled in, all duties were assigned to him. They discussed it, but deliberately did everything to complicate his life. They rebuilt the supply system. But the guy coped with all the difficulties, which greatly angered Morgan. That is why he agreed to supply weapons regularly. Previously, deliveries were made once every 6 months or once every 3 months. The blonde said that if they continue forging weapons of such disgusting quality, the knights will refuse the services of their forge. Morgan was stunned. The word disgusting struck him. He asked again what exactly the other meant by that word. The knight explained. The sword he worked on does not compare at all to what Fake made. The knight thought, what if all those high-quality swords they received earlier were actually made only by Fake? The blonde said coldly that none of their current swords are fit for battle. All magical formulas need rewriting. Morgan sighed and said they already work even on holidays. Maybe they just need to raise the pay. But the knights cut in. If the supply remains at the same level, they will have to reduce the payment instead. They even brought swords on which Fake's spells still remained, as a standard. Morgan grimaced. Could this really be Fake's spell? He was disgusted even to look at products of such low quality. These words immediately shocked the knight. The blonde said that even he, a person without the ability to see magical code, can distinguish this blatant shoddy work. How did this man even dare to speak to him in such a tone? Morgan shrugged and sighed heavily. Then he addressed the captain of the knights and said that it seems he understands nothing. He explained that he is unable to see the code. Therefore, he cannot distinguish a crude pattern from a true work of art. Then he stated that, supposedly, Fake's spell is so pathetic that it is impossible to fix. It is doomed from the moment of creation. The man added that there are no worse charms. No blacksmith could calmly look at them. They would literally be nauseated with disgust. No one could work after that. Morgan recalled the terrible event that happened about a year after Fake became a blacksmith. Then he told the boy directly that he had no talent, and the boy only apologized and admitted that he was not used to it yet. In response, Morgan shouted at him and ordered him to sit in the forge every day and enchant all the swords by himself. From that moment on, he no longer looked at his work and did not want to look. At that moment, the knight asked if all these items were really his handiwork. Morgan confirmed. Then the blonde clarified. Is he trying to say that all the blacksmiths here got their positions through connections and are worthless? Morgan sighed. Yes, it's true. Everyone, including himself, got into the Royal Forge through patronage. But even despite that, they have abilities. They are not like ordinary people. The knight replied that this is enough. He asked at least to cast a spell so that the swords can be used. The blonde said that this is all. He is free. Leaving the office, Morgan thought only one thing. This person is terrible. He is used only to demands, without the slightest compassion. He had never met such a reckless type before. Even though they work tirelessly, these people are doomed, he thought. If he had to become this knight's personal blacksmith, his life would turn into hell. Good thing it didn't come to that. Today he is tired. Let others work, and he will rest a little. Meanwhile, the knight gathered all the blacksmiths in a large room. His first words were harsh. He declared that they all lacked talent. Morgan exchanged glances with his colleagues. Then he asked in surprise what he meant. After all, they are officially listed as royal blacksmiths. In his thoughts he boiled. How does this guy who doesn't even see the code dare to say such a thing? But the knight declared, if they can demonstrate a worthy result, he will not escalate the matter to a higher authority. At first he wanted Fake to check the sword, but he did not expect to be returned such a parody of a weapon. They had the audacity to even present themselves as righteous. He felt disgusted. He unleashed magical power on them. Several blacksmiths immediately fell to the floor. The knight said that as soon as he started the investigation, a whole bunch of dirt surfaced. It turned out that not only Fake, but also other talented blacksmiths left this forge. None stayed here longer than a year, and the reason for this was Morgan himself. He tried to justify himself. Allegedly, it's true they have high staff turnover, but the youth is to blame for everything. The current generation has lost spirit and endurance. The knight cut him off. That's not true. And according to his information, the head of the forge mocked the newcomers, and unable to restrain himself, he sharply flew up to Morgan and grabbed him by the collar. The blonde said that it was about him specifically, but Morgan defended himself. He did not mock anyone. It was just training. Ordinary training. Then the knight spoke about Fake. He didn't even have days off. He stayed overnight in the forge. Where is the training here? No, Morgan has more talents for torture than for blacksmithing. Morgan began to object. Allegedly, all this is fiction. But the knight became even angrier, ordered him to be silent, and waved his hand. The blonde delivered a powerful blow to him. He fell to the ground with a dull groan, and Morgan barely audibly asked if he considered violence normal. In response, the knight coldly asked, how many valuable blacksmiths have they lost because of him? Compared to this, his pain is absolutely worthless. The blonde coldly stated that Morgan is obliged to return Fake, and not only him. All the blacksmiths they lost must come back. Each of the current masters will kneel and personally ask forgiveness from those who left because of them. The knight even suggested several ways to do this. He asked if he understood everything. Morgan heard only one thing. He was fired. He immediately asked again if it was true. The knight shouted, it's obvious. Morgan shouted that he would never kneel. The blonde replied, if they cannot return the people, all will be fired. And besides, he already informed Morgan's family about the situation. The knight added that it seemed everyone just decided to distract from him. Morgan could not believe it. If he is no longer a court blacksmith, if he is stripped of titles, then life will lose its meaning. Then the knight said, if they still manage to return the former masters, he will allow them to join the knightly corps, but they will have to undergo harsh training. For now, this issue is postponed. He has to set out to find the blacksmiths. Morgan only thought, why is all this happening to him? Meanwhile, at the market, the main character handed the boys swords and said everything is ready. Then he asked for their opinion. Iva said the length is perfect. The sword is light, compact, but even so, he feels great power in it. The hero replied that the weapon is tuned specifically to his fighting style. Therefore, it is not very suitable for frontal attacks. Fake added that he tried to make the sword as durable as possible. But still, the blade might not withstand a direct clash with a strong opponent, like Wiser. One must be careful. Iva nodded and thanked him. If the fight goes according to the usual scenario, there will be no problems. Meanwhile, Visor raised the sword. The hero thought it was amazing. He holds such a weight with one hand. He asked aloud, how does it feel? The beastman replied that the weight is perfect. Fake rejoiced, then inquired about the length. He confirmed, everything is wonderful. Vezir said that everything is so perfect that it's hard to believe. For the first time in his life, a sword fits so perfectly in his hand. Fake said that the emphasis is on one decisive strike. Their styles complement each other. Iva lures and Vezir finishes. He nodded. He will cherish this sword. The hero said there's no need to worry. You can use it as much as you want. If it breaks, no problem. Just bring it back. That's the true joy of a blacksmith. After that, he reminded about the payment. As agreed, the sum plus one sword. He thanked them for the honest deal. It was a pleasure working with them. The sword received as part of the payment was in good condition. The magical code needs a little adjustment, and it will be back in service. It can be sold. The guys said they would soon take the promotion exam, and with such weapons they definitely won't have problems. Although, even without the exam, these swords seem like they've been with them for years. Fake said with a smile that he's glad to hear that, but still asked them to be careful. If they failed with his weapon, he would start doubting his skill. One of the guys replied that they will definitely pass, and Vezir promised to become a swordsman worthy of such a weapon. A comrade immediately supported him. After that, they said goodbye and left. Alicia was happy. Everything went as it should. The guys were very satisfied. The hero agreed and said he was also glad. They really liked the swords. The girl smiled sincerely and said she was confident. They will pass the exam. After all, they have his weapon. Time passed. The hero reported that the charms were finished. Everything was ready. The girl examined the swords and said that they all looked wonderful. At that moment, a girl approached the counter. They turned to her. If she wanted, she could try any sword. She only pointed with her finger and said she wanted to support him. They watched silently. The girl asked about the price. Fake answered, 50,000 crowns. She inquired if it could be cheaper. The hero thought maybe he could give a discount down to 40,000. At that moment, the girl came closer and said she could do him a favor. Fake replied that he could not lower the price much, but maybe he would agree to 40. Then Alicia decisively said his price had always been 50,000. The girl nodded. Even at the initial price, it was truly a quality sword. She considered it a very good deal. The stranger suddenly addressed Alicia, asking if she was really a girl. She confirmed and asked in surprise what was wrong, but the stranger only said mysteriously that everything was clear to her anyway. The client said she understood everything. She would buy the sword for 50,000 crowns. The hero thanked her for the purchase. The girl left, and anger was visible in Alicia's eyes. Fake asked what had happened. Alicia ironically asked if he really liked big forms. He assured her he did not, but she said he had been looking. The boy thought it was not about love for the big, just male nature. He glanced inadvertently. Later, they sold 2 more Epherin swords and several daggers to new adventurers. The morning profit was 180,000 crowns. They decided to work at the same pace. Later, a street trader named Rick approached their stall. He said he had not seen them for a long time. The hero's swords and daggers were selling like hotcakes in the neighboring town. He had advertised them well, so a new wave of demand would come soon. The hero was surprised and thanked for the advertisement. Rick added, "They are bought not only by adventurers, but also by real knights." The merchant explained that they even started boasting about the weapons in front of other knights. Then he asked if that wasn't cool. The hero pondered. Don't knights receive weapons from the kingdom or their lords? In his country, the Revenant Empire, everything is exactly like that. Because of this, they had to enchant weapons en masse every week. That was the system. Rick agreed but noted, not all issued weapons are truly of good quality. Knights who have reached a certain status prefer to have their own good weapons. That's why he is here again. He asked how many high-class weapons they currently have. Fake replied, 10 specimens, swords and daggers. The merchant immediately said he would take everything. The hero thanked him. The blonde asked how much it would cost. He heard 800,000. Then Rick noted that he buys wholesale and offered a discount, 700,000. The hero replied that such a price is too low and would negatively affect his business. Fake proposed a compromise. He would add several lower quality items, and then the price would be 760,000. The merchant agreed. The weapons were packed in a wooden box. He said he would leave soon for a long time and would not be able to come. The hero was upset. The blonde replied that instead his apprentice would visit him in a week. Her name is Alm, and she will have a request for him. The hero must prepare several swords of different quality. Even those she does not choose, the merchant will be ready to buy. He explained, He wants to check if the girl can correctly assess the quality of the weapons. The hero said he understood. He will do everything. The merchant added that by that day he must have 10 swords and daggers of the highest class and several simpler samples. Will he make it in time? The hero replied that he will make it in time. The merchant rejoiced and added, the girl will be accompanied by his servant, so she will be recognized immediately. Alicia leaned towards him and quietly asked, is he sure he will make it in a week? The hero smiled. He is already used to it, so he can. She only asked him not to overstrain himself. The merchant asked how much this whole wonder would cost. Fake offered $1.5 million. The merchant immediately tried to reduce it to $300,000. The hero asked in shock, is he serious? Alicia intervened and firmly said, that won't do. It's too low. They agreed that the minimum is $1,450,000. The hero agreed. The merchant said, all right, he will pay $400,000. Fake thought that although it is $1,400,000, it's not bad. But Alicia strictly ordered not to agree to rubbish. She firmly repeated $1,450,000 because they also help with the students' training. The merchant acknowledged her correctness. Let it be their way, he will pay. He thanked and said he would expect their support when the girl arrives. When he left, Fake looked at Alicia and sincerely thanked her. She replied that he, as always, agrees to discounts too easily, and he only happily said that he is happy. His swords are truly needed. The girl said that she understands his feelings, but his blades are the real value, and the price must correspond to the craftsmanship. The hero was embarrassed upon hearing this. He promised that he would no longer lower the price so lightly. Alicia immediately asked who this apprentice was. Fake explained that blacksmiths also pass on experience, and joint work is a common thing. She asked if he really wanted the apprentice to be a girl. He asked in surprise, why specifically a girl? The boy replied that he was lucky with the magic of all the attributes, so he works alone, but he needs an apprentice to share the duties, especially when there are many orders. The hero grabbed the girl by the hands and exclaimed excitedly that he had an idea. Why not have her become his apprentice herself? He was already imagining how he and Alicia would forge swords together, laugh, and she, in a work apron. It would be fun. He asked her what she thought about this idea. The girl blushed and closed her eyes. Alicia apologized and said that she was not as gifted with magic as he was. The boy crossed his arms. Yes, she was right. He thought that if she could see magical objects, she could forge too. But it was more complicated. The girl was upset. If she could, she would agree without hesitation. But now unrest appeared in her thoughts. If another becomes the apprentice, they will spend days together in the workshop. She suddenly screamed and the boy rushed to her. What happened? She suddenly screamed and the boy rushed to her. What happened? She changed the subject and asked where he learned blacksmithing. The young man pondered. Fake said he was from a village. He was picked up on the street, and his blacksmith parents taught him everything they knew. He looked at his hands. Those people were no longer there. The girl asked what picked up meant. He replied, his biological parents abandoned him. He was an orphan. Alicia became upset. Fake noticed this and asked her not to worry. He was too young to remember their faces. She smiled and said that today she was lucky. She learned a little more about him. The boy smiled in response. Her words warmed him. The girl exclaimed joyfully that the day was wonderful. Everything was sold. The boy agreed. It was not for nothing that they left the shop open longer. Suddenly their conversation was interrupted. Adventurers were calling the main character and waving their hands. Fake asked with a smile if they had passed the exam. They confirmed, and the boy praised. What are the results? The young adventurers happily reported. The exam was passed, promoted to rank D. They thanked him for the weapons. Fake and Alicia exchanged glances. The boy sincerely congratulated them and added, it was nice to help. Their weapon is convenient, and now they are close to rank C. However, the hero noted, it's not just about the weapon. They received it recently and already mastered it, which means they have talent. They wanted to object, but the boy stopped them. If they need weapons again, feel free to contact. Fake added, by that time he will try to get even better magical steel, because the current metal might not match their skills. The adventurers promised. They would recommend them to their friends. The boy thanked them and wished them luck. They waved to each other once more and said goodbye until the next meeting. The young man watched them leave and thought about how those who received weapons from his hands are rising higher and higher. He was filled with pride. He decided he would not fall behind. Alicia supported him. Already at the manor, the hero submitted a report. The total profit amounted to 1,200,000 crowns. The master asked about the individual order from the merchant. The boy confirmed. He added that besides this, adventurers visit the shop, and the goods are gradually gaining recognition. The man asked if everything was fine with him. The boy nodded. Everything was great. The manor owner replied sadly that there could be no doubt about his skill. The man fell silent. The boy noticed this and asked what had happened. The Duke silently handed him an envelope and said that the boy had received a letter. The protagonist took the envelope and, as if casually, asked if it was from Laventra. The man replied that he himself had also received a letter. It was about an order for the blacksmith. The boy was surprised. The Duke asked if he would accept this order. The boy agreed, adding that he would gladly take on the blacksmith's work. The man promised to write a reply immediately. The boy thanked him and assured that he would not let him down. But going to his room, he doubted. After all, the order came from Levert himself. Remembering the character of this man, he understood. Pleasing him would not be easy. The next morning, the hero saw the guest. Levert greeted him, embracing him. Levert beamed with a smile, thanked the young man for accepting the order, while Fake mentally only dreamed of personal space. Then he asked what kind of weapon the guest desired. The customer took out a small box and opened it magically. From there, he took a handkerchief and asked to look carefully. The hero saw metal and, surprised, asked, "Was this magical iron area?" Levert confirmed. That was exactly why he had come to him. The boy thought, magical iron can be obtained from the bodies of monsters, sometimes even from an ordinary goblin. It all depends on luck. That is why adventurers set out hunting every day in hopes of a rare find. Levert clarified, "What about the second magical material, Varia?" He replied, "Where he yields to area, but for the blacksmith, this is still a unique opportunity to demonstrate his skill." The boy agreed. The protagonist thought that area was hardly sold, and swords made from it were family heirlooms. But his thoughts were interrupted by Levert. That's not all. The boy opened the chest, and something incredible appeared before him. In the chest lay a dragon's claw and fang. Levert confirmed that they destroyed the dragon that invaded their lands and obtained from its body area, a claw, and fangs. That is why he came with this order. The boy said that you cannot defeat a dragon every day and asked, did he do it himself? He objected. It is impossible alone. Knights helped him, and only by joint efforts were they able to defeat the monster. The boy replied that even so, it is an incredible victory that brought a real trophy. For a blacksmith, creating a weapon from such rare materials is the best reward. Levert smiled. He is glad that the blacksmith is so inspired. Cosnet proposed to take area as the base and fill the volume shortage with Varia material. The boy noted to himself that obtaining Varia was not so simple, and the volume of area would hardly be enough for a full-fledged weapon. He asked if that was why Levere also provided materials from the dragon itself. The client confirmed. The claw and fang should compensate for the shortage and further improve the quality of the sword. The protagonist agreed, but added that even so the alloy would not be perfect. Was he ready to compromise for the sake of making a weapon from what was available? Levert sighed and agreed. He understood everything and had to come to terms with it, as there was no other choice. Placing his hand on the boy's shoulder, he said he was counting heavily on his skills. The youth assured that he would not let him down. Looking at these incredible materials, the hero thought that this was the true fate of a blacksmith, to face the extraordinary. Seeing so many rare things before him, he felt a joyful tremor inside. He could no longer wait to start work. The blacksmith inquired what kind of weapon the client wanted. Levert took out a knife and a sword, showing them to the youth. Handing over the sword, he asked that the future product have the same shape. The boy pulled the sword from its sheath and began to examine it, noting that the blade was made from a mixture of Varia and area materials. He noted that the blade was forged with great precision, and the magical enchantment was at the highest level. Levert added that this time he wants an even more perfect blade, made from dragon materials and magical metal. The protagonist asked if it would be possible to use the anicaps. Levert agreed. If the blade turns out better than the old one, he trusts him completely. He also said that the weight, length, and shape are at the discretion of the blacksmith himself. The guy replied that he would do everything possible to exceed the client's expectations. Levert sat on the chair and began to observe, while the young man meanwhile started melting and mixing two types of metal. Everything happened according to the standard scheme. There was nothing complicated. The crucible contained perfectly alloyed metal, exactly the kind that was needed. But the hero understood the real difficulties were still ahead. The dragon's fang and claw also needed to be melted and properly joined. He took them in his hands and felt a faint warmth, as if a heart was still beating inside. This feeling was completely unusual. The client silently watched as the boy studied these rare components. He placed the claw and fang into the bowl, but they did not yield to the flame. After all, dragons are extremely resistant to high temperatures. The boy realized it is necessary to precisely adjust the magical flow and significantly increase the temperature. With the help of magic, he finally managed to move the material, and the claw with the fang began to slowly melt. Levert was sincerely impressed. He did not expect the boy to master it so quickly. The client added with a smile that he expected nothing less, since most blacksmiths do not even take on dragon materials. This is work only for masters, and you are a true master. The young man continued the process and reported that the materials had already fully fused. He took the cup with the liquid metal and prepared to mix it with the dragon remnants. The main character carefully poured the alloy and began mixing, not taking his eyes off the future creation. The young man exhaled and reported that the synthesis of the magical properties of all the materials was successful. The client was impressed and praised the work. The boy thanked him and said that now he would give the alloy shape, but it was still far from finished. Would he continue to watch? He nodded. The opportunity to see such a master at work is a rare gift, and he wants to be present until the very end. The boy agreed and returned to the task. He began shaping the sword with a hammer, working according to the standard algorithm and controlling the magical indicators. Despite the fusion of magical metal and dragon components, their essences had not yet united. Externally, the alloy was whole, but inside, no. While he was shaping the sword, he was combining magical streams, weaving them into the material. When the alloy became one, he deliberately destroyed its structure to create a new one. Only this way does steel become truly strong. The young man continued tirelessly forging without stopping. The client silently watched his every move. The work took the whole day, and the completion had to be postponed until morning. The next morning, having stayed overnight, the client was again standing by the anvil, ready for the finale. The final shaping of the blade was completed, but before sharpening, the sword needed inspection. For a double-edged sword, balance symmetry was critical, and the boy carefully checked it. The next stage was creating the hilt from airy metal. The hero made the hilt and attached it to the sword. He approached Levert and offered to test the sword before the final finishing. He took the weapon, carefully examined it, and waved it in the air. He swung the sword several times, testing it in motion. Finally, he stopped, smiled, and looked at the blacksmith. The boy asked about his impressions. Levert replied that the sword was simply a masterpiece. Although it was a copy of the previous one, it was incredible. From the very first forging, the hero rejoiced and suggested moving on to the final processing. The client noted that the level of the young man's wind magic was impressive, as was his ability to control all the elements. He replied that years of training had not been in vain. The young man added that he had finished sharpening and it was time to move on to the spells. He decided to use modified charms, similar to those on Levert's sword, but adapted for area metal. The blacksmith worked with a smile, while the client continued to watch silently. Finally, the sword was ready. Levert swung it again. He noted the sword not only fit perfectly in the hand, magic passed through it freely, and the spells were precise and powerful. The boy was glad that the work was appreciated. The client added that he would not be able to repair such a sword if it broke. The blacksmith replied that thanks to area, the sword would last at least 2 months. He grabbed his hand, as if to say, "These hands work miracles." The protagonist awkwardly stepped back and asked not to exaggerate. The client thanked him and suggested moving on to payment. Levert offered 5 million brackets, but the hero immediately refused. The amount was too large. The boy said that he himself provided all the materials, immediately determined the shape of the sword, and for his work he would take no more than 300,000 crowns. Levert objected. He studied all the nuances, knows how hard it is to work with such materials, and weapons made of area metal cost 10 times more. He suggested taking the chest. It contained the full amount, along with several artifacts. The young man replied that these were extremely rare items, which are rarely found even in dungeons, and accepting such value was too much. But Levert insisted the sword was worth it. He added that a sword made of urea material could even compete with the steel weapons of Esli himself. Levert expressed a desire to continue cooperation with him as a blacksmith. It would be mutually beneficial. The boy nodded and thanked him. Lavert thanked again for the creation and promised to become a warrior worthy of this blade. Alicia, observing all this, noted, the sword completely exceeded her expectations. Processing area metal and dragon components was already a feat. She happily said that even her father was impressed and would probably soon appreciate his skill. The boy asked again, "Is that true?" she confirmed, but said that everything depended on whether he truly recognized it. The hero did not understand what would change, since he was only a fake fiancé for them, a shield against other contenders. But if he will be useful to Alicia, then he is grateful for that. The boy did not know how much longer he could deceive Lord Girl. One day, when she finds someone who truly loves her, his role will end. He realizes it all started from pity. Kind Alicia simply pitied the one everyone laughed at. He forgot about it and plunged headlong into blacksmithing, seeking recognition. So childishly. The girl noticed a change in mood and asked if everything was okay, if he was not tired. The boy smiled sadly. Everything was fine. He said that next week the apprentice Riga Almi was supposed to arrive. There were still a few orders, but he hadn't even started on them. Alicia was outraged, saying that after such work one needs to rest. But the boy objected. This is his hobby, which also brings profit. She asked, at least a little rest, but he stubbornly insisted, not tired. The girl was still worried and asked to rest at least this week. The young man agreed, saying that for a change he could try, especially since it was not urgent. He suggested going somewhere together and eating deliciously. She gladly agreed, and he could not imagine what awaited him ahead. He confessed to himself he would not be able to quell the desire to forge worthy weapons. His dream, that his blades would serve many. This is the essence of his existence, to follow the call of the heart as a true blacksmith. Meanwhile, the master of the house stood in his office and thought about Laver, who thanked him for the permission to order a fake sword from a fake fiancé. Lavert said that magical iron, viria metal, and dragon fangs merged into one blade. Everything exceeded his expectations. The Duke was surprised. Could such a weapon really be forged? The man asked if he could find out exactly what he had agreed to and why it was necessary to order from Fike. After all, both suitors for his daughter's hand are blacksmiths. The boy replied that Lady Alicia highly valued Fike's talent, and as a craftsman he wanted to test what he was capable of. He added that processing and shaping such materials is no easy task. The Duke admitted, as a blacksmith, he was impressed by his skill, and it was no coincidence that Alicia chose him among all. The man came out of his thoughts about the recent conversation and slowly turned around. In the room stood a large chest, silent, massive, closed. The girl approached closer, opened the lid, and looked at the sword lying inside. The man watched intently, immersed in his own reflections. Graal was convinced only that boy was capable of repairing the blade. Alicia complained to Leffe, saying the false fiancé was constantly in the forge, preparing goods, and they hardly spent any time together. The maid suggested watching how he worked. The girl replied that she would only distract him. He is immersed in work, ignoring everything else. The maid understood her and promised to take it upon herself. She knocked on the forge door and asked to be let in. The boy agreed, but she said that something terrible had happened to the lady. He became worried. What happened? The maid answered, the lady really wants to have tea with him along with sweets. The boy immediately stopped working and hurried to her. After a 2-week break, the heroes reopened their shop, took their usual places, and prepared for work. As always, they divided the goods by quality, added a batch for the apprentice Riga, and at the request of the merchant, the hero forged swords and daggers. The amount of weapons increased, which attracted buyers. Alicia said that the chest from Lavert was very useful. The boy could carry much more things. People were passing by, and suddenly a voice rang out from the crowd. Adventurers started talking about this shop and approached the heroes. They asked if this was the same forge of Fike. When they received confirmation, one of them said that he had bought a sword from a traveling merchant. He added that is why he came personally. He allowed his companions to test the blade. It fit perfectly in the hand. Everyone wanted one just like it. The boy was pleased with the praise and sincerely thanked them. He thought that probably it was really Riga who advertised his swords, but he did not expect customers to appear so quickly. The adventurers chose weapons and asked to buy several swords and daggers. The hero thanked for the purchase and announced the price. Although he gave a discount, the order brought in 200,000 gold coins. And this was just in the morning. 3 buyers at once. A real stroke of luck. Soon new clients appeared. Someone brought friends, and the boy thought that probably those who praised his blades in the taverns were not lying. Some came after hearing rumors about the power of ivies. Others learned about it from merchants. By noon, the shop was full of people. The girl said it was incredible. Today, there was no end to the buyers. The boy agreed, thanked Riga for such popularity. She noted he should call the apprentice because the blades were running out quickly. The boy thought that there were significantly more people than last time, even if not everyone was buying, but just watching. That was already a great sign. A mustached man asked to buy 2 daggers and a sword. Alicia thanked for the purchase. The boy thought, hopefully not to sell everything too quickly, but Alicia noticed that there were fewer people, and turning around, they saw those they were waiting for. Right in front of them stood a crowd of adventurers and Riga Alma herself. Riga Alma appeared before them, incredibly beautiful, confidently looked ahead, and asked if this was the very shop she had been told about. Seeing her, the main characters were a bit confused and exchanged awkward glances. The presence of such a girl threw them off balance. Alma greeted them, wished a good day, and politely introduced herself. She asked if he was the same fake. The boy confirmed and asked if she was a student of Riga. She laughed and said that as the teacher had already told him, today she came instead of him. Alma added that her mentor praised his work, saying that he creates extraordinary weapons. The young man blushed. It was hard for him to believe such words. Alicia slightly squinted her eyes and cast a sidelong glance at the guest. The boy awkwardly said that he had prepared weapon samples so she could evaluate them. Alicia did not take her eyes off him, carefully watching his reaction. The young man said he had several items. They could choose any. The girl thanked him, accepting the offer. The boy began to worry whether he had mixed higher quality samples with simpler ones, and whether Alma would be able to notice the difference. She took the sword, ran her fingers over the hilt, trying to understand the material and structure by touch. Riga's student chose the sword and 10 daggers. The heroes were surprised. The difference between the samples was not obvious, but she flawlessly chose the best. The boy smiled and announced the price. Altogether, it would cost 450,000 crowns. Alma silently pondered, and the young man patiently waited. Finally, the girl touched her lips and asked, "What about a discount?" She gently clasped his hand and began to ask for at least a small discount. The young man was embarrassed. Alma smiled innocently, and Alicia looked at all this in confusion. Alma continued to insist that as a regular customer, she deserved a discount, but the young man tried to politely refuse. He realized that the girl was resorting to temptation, but thought she had chosen the wrong young man for such tricks. The young man mentally recalled Alicia. She was important to him, and although Alma's actions did not cause disgust, he knew where the limit was. He saw how Alicia became embarrassed, and for him it was like a blow. So the young man decisively withdrew his hand, as if rejecting temptation. Crossing his arms over his chest, the young man firmly said that the price was final and there would be no discounts. The girl was upset, admitting that her approach did not work, but acknowledged the young man had character, so she agreed to pay the full amount. The young man was already glad, but Alma added he was a true master and asked where he had worked before. The young man replied that he had worked in the Revenant Empire, but was very grateful to fate that he moved here. Alma smiled and said that perhaps their paths would cross again, so she would not say goodbye. She coquettishly blew him an air kiss and wished for a quick meeting. The boy was proud of himself. It was not so easy to confuse him. He turned to Alicia, glad that today they managed to sell a lot of weapons at a good price. But she was silent, and that made him uneasy. Alicia suddenly asked Shaylee if she still liked burly men. The boy did not understand what she meant by that, and asked what it was about. She calmly replied that it was about Lady Alma. Alicia noticed how the boy was looking at her. He fell silent, not knowing what to say in response. The young man began to deny frantically, saying that nothing like that happened. But Alicia almost cried, saying that she saw it and that was not a lie. The boy again could not find anything to answer and only timidly asked her to listen, saying that a man is also just a male. He began to explain that wild males tend to react to movement, prey, or threat. It is an instinct that cannot always be controlled. Alicia was offended and bitterly asked if that meant she did not deserve his attention. The boy immediately tried to calm her down. He did not mean anything like that. Suddenly, the girl gently grabbed his arm, pressing closer. The boy blushed and asked confusedly what she was doing. Alicia closed her eyes and quietly asked if she could hug him, even if just for a little while. With anxiety in her voice, she asked once again, "Is she really not worth attention?" Not letting go of his hand, Alicia asked directly, "Does he like girls like her?" The boy tried to hold her back because first and foremost, it was she who was in his heart. He realized that it was Alicia who once defined his tastes. The girl with pain in her eyes let go of his hand, apologizing for the inconvenience. The boy gently replied that everything was fine. They both were silent. The trade for today was over. The last client was Alma. The revenue reached 120,000 crowns. It was the most successful day at the market. Returning to the estate, the master noted that the young man's affairs were going better than ever today. The youth agreed, recalling that some orders had come thanks to the traveling merchant. The boy bowed, reporting that he had completed all the tasks, and politely asked for permission to leave. But he was stopped. Goro lowered his gaze, saying nothing, while the boy silently waited for an answer. The man finally admitted that he was sincerely impressed by the young man's success. The latter did not understand what exactly the conversation was leading to. Goro noted that he did not expect the boy to be able to organize such a powerful trade in a foreign country where no one knew him. The main character modestly replied that he was simply lucky because a significant part of the profit depends on the merchant. If he loses interest, everything can change. But at the same time, he mentally understood how many people had already supported him, including those who bought weapons. The young man remembered that it was precisely thanks to Alicia that he was able to climb so high. Without her, this path would have been impossible. Garl agreed, adding that although the merchant is important, not everything depends solely on him. The young man replied that adventurers also recommended him, and this strengthens his reputation. Rao, having felt this, noted that it means only one thing: his weapon truly helps people in battles. The man added that buyers return precisely because of the young man's talent as a blacksmith. That is the secret. The boy smiled shyly and thanked the master once again for the kind words. The master rose from the chair and said he wanted to make a personal request. The boy immediately promised to do everything in his power. Then the man opened a chest and took out an ancient sword. Girl asked if the young man could restore this blade, a weapon extremely important to him. The main character took the sword in his hands and asked for permission to examine it carefully. He tried to read the data encrypted in the enchanted blade, but furrowed his brow. The inscription seemed incomprehensible to him. Suddenly, the young man felt dizzy. An excessive informational load hit him like a wave. He mentally compared this data to an entire library that suddenly overwhelmed his brain. Such a dense flow of information was in the blade. The boy realized that if the sword caused such a reaction, it meant it contained much more magic than he could perceive. The master asked if everything was all right. The boy asked for time to concentrate. The hero noted that the mechanism of the charms was quite simple, but the amount of magical power invested in it was simply colossal. The young man noticed that the sword was damaged along its entire length. In such a condition, it could break at any moment, just by applying force. The Fae reported that he had already identified the main problem, and then the man asked if he could repair the blade. The boy confirmed, although he noted, due to the volume of magic, it would not be possible to handle it immediately. He calculated that a full restoration of the sword would take at least 1 day. Gorel, hearing this, sincerely rejoiced. The owner advised not to rush and to do everything thoroughly and reliably. The boy accepted the order, promising to do everything properly. The young man understood that this sword was of great importance to Lord Gorel, so it should be restored as quickly as possible, but without compromising quality and magic. The next day, the boy began work on the sword that once belonged to Alicia's father. Rereading the data from the blade, the young man concluded that many runes and symbols were not working. They needed to be restored with maximum accuracy to avoid breaking the magical structure. He realized that the sword was forged from a rare alloy, iron of Iran and Helios, which made it even more valuable. The young man thought that such materials immediately showed this was the creation of a master. The power of the magic here was simply shocking, so the work would take more time than he had thought. He noticed that the one who enchanted the sword had worked on it without rest for several days. It was exhausting but brilliant labor. The boy understood. Restoring everything from scratch was true hell, but even despite this, he could repair it. He remembered how his parents told him that this sword had not lost its magic for over 10 years, and that was truly impressive. At first, the boy thought the secret was in the alloy, but later dismissed this idea. The matter was not in the metal, but in the incredible skill of a blacksmith of the highest level. And this meant that he had room to grow. His art was only beginning. With these thoughts, he continued working. He pondered. If he could ever create a similar sword, he would make it one that would survive more than 1 century. But he does not seek fame. He is not interested in a place in history or titles. He wants to do all this for only one reason, so that even after his death, his blades protect people. Noticing that he had become distracted, the boy stopped the flow of thoughts and focused on the repair. By noon, the main part was completed. Only the details remained to be worked out. At that moment, there was a knock at the door. The boy allowed her to come in, and it was Alicia. Seeing that he was completely absorbed in work, she asked how the repairs were progressing. The young man replied that only the final polishing remained. The girl was surprised that he had done so much in half a day, but he shrugged. Just a regular repair. Alicia smiled, ran her fingers along the blade, and said that fake was truly incredible. She reported that this sword was forged by her grandfather. Her father's father, that is, her own grandfather. The boy asked in surprise where grandfather was now. The girl replied that he died 10 years ago. The young man noticed what this meant. The sword was extremely valuable to Mr. Gural, and the girl agreed with this. The boy thoughtfully added that this was exactly why he entrusted him with restoring such an important relic. And this proved the Duke would not entrust this matter to just anyone. He believed in his skill. Alicia said that her father himself tried to repair the sword but failed, and was sad about it for a long time. The girl added that her father lacked blacksmith talent, so he could not restore the blade that he inherited after his grandfather's death. The young man was shocked but understood her father. The burden of responsibility for the legacy was too heavy. The hero realized that this order was a silent test. Mr. Gural did not fully recognize him yet, but had already entrusted him with the family relic. And this meant that at least he believed in him. And in this blade there was definitely something more than just steel. A warm memory, a piece of the heart. The boy said that now he had absolutely no right to make a mistake. Alicia wished him luck, with a look full of hope. The young man again immersed himself in work. Several hours of painstaking jewelry work passed over the final polishing. Finally, he completed the last touches. The sword was fully restored, as if a new life was breathed into a forgotten legend. The boy remembered how he checked the spell dozens of times because he was not sure if he managed to exactly reproduce the original. He was as if rewriting history. Alicia asked for permission to look at the sword. The boy agreed, but warned that she might be stunned by the flow of magical information. However, the girl still took the blade and tried to read it. Her fingers trembled, but she did not stop. She suddenly felt dizzy, but even despite this, she whispered that the work was brilliant. Although she could catch only a part, she said that she felt the same emotions that her grandfather once embedded in the sword, as if the blade came to life again, filled with new power. Smiling, Alicia thanked the boy for returning Bernasto's true pride to the home. The boy sincerely smiled in response. Her words became the highest reward for him, more important than gold or praise. He said that he would immediately take the sword to Mr. Gural. He had been waiting for this moment with trepidation and excitement. Alicia laughed, saying that her father would jump for joy like a child, but the boy did not believe it. He replied that he doubted the father was capable of that, but the girl reminded him that her father knows how to surprise. The boy recalled he really had seen something like that. He admitted that although he was nervous, he could not wait for his reaction. Alicia encouraged him, saying, "Do not delay." The Duke was truly surprised. Could he have repaired the sword so quickly? Doubt and hope mixed in his voice. The boy confirmed that he had done everything possible and handed the sword to the Duke. He took it carefully with respect. The Duke slowly drew the blade from the sheath. His gaze was fixed on the blade. Silent, thoughtful, deeply personal. A shadowy sadness appeared on his face. The boy did not understand and held his breath, waiting for a reaction. Alicia's father slowly moved the sword through the air, testing it. His eyes widened. Surprise broke through the calm. He suddenly released the sword. It remained standing vertically, the blade embedded in the ground. The Duke tried to read the data embedded in the sword. He closed his eyes as if trying to feel the soul of the blade. The boy noticed how difficult it was for him. It seemed that not only magic, memories pressed harder. With a deep sigh, the Duke whispered, "This is exactly the same sword, like that day." And then he could not hold back. Tears ran down his face. He remembered how he first received the sword from his father's hands. With closed eyes, the Duke whispered, as if a prayer, "This is the very same sword. It is definitely it." He admitted that he never thought he would see it again in its original strength and beauty. It was a miracle. Lowering his head, the Duke whispered, "Before me, a true outstanding blacksmith." The boy blushed, smiled shyly, and bowed low. He thanked, Not as a student, but as a master. The boy bowed respectfully, but the Duke suddenly called him by name, making him stop. Gural unexpectedly recognized the young man as Alicia's fiancé. These words sounded too mundane, but carried the weight of thunder. The boy froze, asking if he had heard correctly. His heart trembled as if struck by a hammer on an anvil. The Duke calmly repeated, "Only he is worthy to worry about his daughter." There was no doubt in his eyes. The hero mentally noted that he would have waited for such words for years, but certainly not today. He bowed his head again in gratitude, but his soul was heavy, for he knew their engagement was only a pretense. However, the Duke kindly placed his hand on his head, warning, "Do not dare upset Alicia." The young man only silently nodded. Gural added that his daughter is charming. "Does he agree?" The boy confirmed, too sincerely to hide it. And then the Duke turned everything into a joke. If he dares to give in to instincts, his head will decorate the palisade. The young man grimaced, but he understood the hint. But if everything is by mutual consent, maybe he will give permission. This already sounded not like a threat, but like a blessing. The boy did not know how to react to this. He thought it was only about the sword, and now he was almost betrothed. The Duke sternly added, "Let him not forget about blacksmithing. His hands must remember fire and hammer." And finally he warned, "When everyone finds out that he is the only suitor for Alicia's hand, there will be many ill-wishers around." The young man listened carefully to these words. Having left the office, he could not understand for a long time what to do now. The event came suddenly. The only thing he understood for sure is that first he needs to talk to Alicia about their fake engagement. At that time, the girl was cleaning his workshop, neatly arranging the materials for forging. The boy entered the smithy, and she greeted him with a smile. He asked if she had decided to tidy up a bit here. She nodded. Noticing that the girl even swept the floor, the boy thanked her. The smithy was cleaner than ever. Alicia blushed and laughed. She asked what her father said. The boy replied he was satisfied with the sword repair. He added that the Duke was truly moved by what he saw. Alicia rejoiced. Her eyes sparkled. She cheerfully declared that she would go to her father a little later. She wants to see how happy he is. The boy smiled, but sadly, and added that the Duke acknowledged him. Like her fiancé. It sounded quietly, but the echo remained loud. Alicia froze. Her eyes widened. She could not believe her own ears. She asked again if the father really said exactly that. The boy nodded, confirming everything. Her joy burst out. She screamed with happiness, like a child who was given the most cherished gift, and added, "Now they are officially engaged." But the boy stopped her, loudly and decisively. He reminded her about their lie. More and more, it seemed to him that continuing this game was unfair. He confessed that he could no longer pretend. This deception weighed on him like a shadow on the soul. Alicia froze. A napkin fell from her hands. She asked quietly, "What does he mean?" The boy recalled the conversation with the Duke. He sincerely cared about Alicia, always putting her feelings above noble conventions. He reminded how the Duke tested him not only as a blacksmith, but also as a possible husband for his daughter. The young man said with pain that the Duke spoke to him as an equal despite their different statuses, and even approved their relationship. That is why the hero could no longer lie. He could not betray this trust with silence. He firmly stated he must tell the truth to the Duke, without deception, without tricks, and added there was no love between him and Alicia, at least not from the very beginning. The girl bowed her head, confused and upset. Her eyes trembled at these words. The boy did not even suspect that his sincerity would bring her such pain. But later he realized he liked Alicia more than he thought. Stronger, deeper, more painfully. Alicia rushed to speak, interrupting herself, justifying and apologizing. She admitted that that day when she asked him to be a fake fiancé, she was actually hiding the truth, and she was ashamed. The boy did not understand what was meant and asked directly. The girl began to explain. All the words about a cover were just an excuse. In reality, the matter was different. She confessed. The main thing was her true feelings. She loved him, always loved him, and could no longer hide it. The boy was stunned. Alicia continued. She had always loved him. With a smile through tears, she repeated it once more, as if afraid the first time was not enough. These feelings had tormented her since their first meeting. They had grown unnoticed. At first, he simply liked her. She was interested in his character, eyes, voice. His smile was like the sun to her, bright, warm, unforgettable. She lived in anticipation of seeing it again. She confessed that she fell in love with his passion for the forge, the dream to become the best, his gentle laugh and kindness. She said she adored every feature of his entire essence, every breath, every touch. Alicia closed her eyes and smiled shyly, hiding her cheek in her palms. The boy was confused, his cheeks flushed from such a frank confession. He asked again, "Was it true?" The girl nodded and apologized again for all those days of deceit. She said she dragged him into this game only out of her own selfishness. Her heart was beating with pain. She knew how he always wanted to please her father, was kind to her, and now she had also imposed unrequited love on him. The boy couldn't stand it. He quickly pressed her to himself in an embrace as protection from her self-flagellation. He did not understand what unrequited meant and began to ask her again. And then, without hesitation, with a trembling voice, the hero confessed he loved her too, with all his heart. The boy tightly embraced Alicia, confessing that he loved only her, always, without exceptions. She was the only reason he held on in the palace, did not break down. Her presence, rare visits to the forge, were his only light among the cold stone walls. He couldn't hold back. He began to cry, calling her his salvation, his only source of warmth. The boy admitted that he had always considered her unattainable, because he was a commoner and she was the daughter of a duke. He forbade himself to fall in love, restrained his heart, but love broke through. He gently broke the embrace and said that he wanted to be near not as a false fiancé, but as a true, genuine beloved. He confessed his love again, and again, and again. If he could, he would say it 100 times. Alicia blushed and asked him to stop. The boy did not understand. Why? She answered through a smile. Her face now looked like a demon's, from happiness. The boy also laughed and embraced her again, unwilling to let go. He asked if they could start everything from a clean slate. The girl silently leaned toward him. Alicia said that now they were not a fake couple. They were real, genuine, their own. The boy smiled and agreed with every word she said. Then the girl asked, why did he fall in love with her? What exactly made his heart beat? He answered, she always came to the forge, just to see him. She nodded. This touched the young man. He had no idea, and this truth melted something in his chest. Holding hands, he said, no one but her had ever been so kind to him. She saved him. Her warmth helped him stand firm, to move forward despite everything. Alicia lowered her gaze and said that if she had known about the bullying earlier, everything would have been different. The young man objected. She could not be by his side around the clock. Her fault was only in kindness. He recalled how the master forged a mask of politeness in front of Alicia, but one day a bruise betrayed the truth. Now he asked her too, when did she first fall in love? The girl asked if he was really interested. She reminded him of the meeting under the tree 3 years ago, her first and most important. That year, her mother died, and the girl wandered in the shadow of sorrow without support. She said that she studied fencing and etiquette, not because she wanted to, but because it was necessary. In despair, she went to her mother's favorite tree, just to breathe fresh air. And there in the silence, she saw a young man with a smile, the one who changed everything. She remembered. She asked him a silly question, but he answered sincerely with warmth. Since then, she kept his smile in her memory, looked for his gaze at every ball, and realized she had fallen in love. The boy, blushing, asked if she had found the things she wanted to do. Alicia smiled and nodded. Her work was to live together with him. She dreamed of laughing with him over silly things, sharing hard and joyful moments. To be by his side when he became the best blacksmith in the world, and to see it first. The boy looked at her, listening to her speak, as if he desired nothing else. Alicia asked if that sounded strange. The young man only smiled softly. He answered, nothing can be better than her decision to stay close. Once he forgot about the dream to become better, because the only thing he wanted then was to get out of hell. But now he definitely knew he wants to become the best for her. This realization did not come immediately. But then, when their hearts finally opened to each other, they were standing in the Duke's office when he remembered Alicia had received another invitation to the ball, as did Fake. One of the letters came through him, and he, of course, read it. The Duke handed over the envelope, and the boy saw the familiar inscription, Palace Forge. He sighed, a letter from Morgan. But what does he need after so many years? The young man unfolded the letter. A shadow flashed across his face. The girl asked what was there. The letter said, the guild is declining, and the blacksmiths find it hard to provide knights with quality weapons. They work without rest. Morgan wrote as if into the void, urging his comrade to return. The Duke raised his eyes. The letter also asked to pass the message to Fake, if he still works at the estate. If he has been dismissed, they apologize. The boy understood everything. If you are not needed, you are simply thrown away. This is the whole essence of the message. The Duke folded his hands and asked directly, is the boy not afraid to return to the place where he could be crushed again? The young man sadly lowered his head. Yes, most likely, that is exactly what will happen. He was asked a direct question. Does he plan to return since the title of Palace Blacksmith is an honor for any house? Fake pondered. If he becomes part of the Duke's family, this title will bring glory. But is this happiness worth it? The man continued, strength is important, but no less important is the happiness of the children. Both poles should be considered in the choice. Therefore, he cannot allow his son to go where he will be unhappy. The newlyweds froze in surprise. Alicia blushed, smiled with closed eyes. Could it be that the father recognizes Fake as his son? The Duke hurried to clarify. The fact that Alicia is still not engaged is the merit of Girl himself. He put her happiness above all. The boy bowed and replied that he does not want to return to the Empire. Girl was silent for a moment, then offered to write the refusal himself. It would be more honorable that way. The blacksmith thanked him. He still believed that for the Empire, the boy was just expendable material. Alicia interrupted her father. He asked, what does she want? Alicia decided to personally deliver the letter. The ball was a good opportunity. She was supposed to go there so she could hand over the message herself, looking into the eyes of those who dared to address it. Her father did not understand why all the fuss. She hated balls. The question, why do you need this, hung in the air again. But invitations kept coming because everyone considered her free. Now she had the chance to introduce her fiancé to the whole world. At her words, the young man blushed. The Duke thought, then asked Fike directly if he agreed to this. The young man nodded. The Duke smiled approvingly. If Alicia was willing to go to the ball for him, that meant a lot. He also wanted to officially announce their relationship. The man took to writing the letter and advised the young couple to prepare for departure. When they were left alone, Fake thanked her, but the girl stopped him. She wanted to deliver the letter herself in front of everyone. Those audacious scribblers had to hear her. She was furious that the Imperials dared to look down on her husband. They would never get the genius they were not worthy of. She shouted that those very ones should forge in their own smithies. Let them go mad with envy, because they would never see such a blacksmith. Placing her hands on his stomach, she confidently said, as soon as they find out that he became part of the Bernasto house, all they will have left is shame. The young man understood. She was doing all this for him. Without her, he would never have been able to stand so confidently beside her. Alicia was embarrassed. She believed it was not so. After all, he had done a lot for her too. For her, happiness is simply walking beside him. Nothing more is needed. The boy only muttered something indistinct, but in his mind he noted, after the confession, Alicia began to talk more often about her feelings. She agreed with him and suddenly hugged him. And at that moment, she confessed her love. The boy froze. It was unusual for him to hear this, and he did not know how to respond. Their eyes met. And although the girl was nervous, she was infinitely happy. He smiled at her. Alicia asked if his heart was beating just as wildly. The boy joked, if he became any happier, he would simply burst. Alicia laughed. She liked those words. The Fake looked at her with love. Once he only watched lovers from afar. Back then, he did not understand how people could spend so much time together. But now, every day with Alicia was a joy. They ended the conversation. It was time to prepare for departure. Meanwhile, somewhere else, a man angrily slammed his fist on the table. Open letters lay nearby, but the reply had not come. He was going crazy waiting, not understanding. Could it be that they were mocking him? The commander felt humiliated. Fake did not respond to his letter. Clenching the paper, he almost growled, if he was near Alicia, let him send a reply. And if not, at least let Dim Barnasto respond to him properly. He recalled how humbly he begged the other smiths to return. Some took pity, but at what cost? He trampled his pride for survival, but most preferred to remain silent and not return. Among them, the most important was Fake himself. Although maybe he was mistaken, and that young man was not such a genius after all. Covering his face with his hands, the man remembered something he could say. Perhaps it would improve his situation a little more. In his memories, the boy called his father for help. Without it, he was doomed. He believed that blood ties would not abandon him to fate. But hopes were not fulfilled. Once the knight commander decided to get rid of his son, he was no longer part of their house. The family lost face, and their reputation fell to the level of a yard dog. He was lucky they just kicked him out and didn't charge him. Morgan begged, even burst into tears, but the father remained unshaken. He expelled his son from the family. Thus the boy lost his home, family, and was forced to huddle where he is now. The office fell apart. Subordinates fled. Who were they anyway? His thoughts were interrupted by a voice. Someone mentioned Lady Alicia and her fiancé, who it turned out was the very same fake. The man could not believe it. Could it really be true? At that moment, a carriage arrived, footsteps echoing through the courtyard. The couple stepped out of the carriage, looking at the palace with a smile. The boy thought about how long it had been since he was here. The ball was to take place in the royal castle. Aristocrats from other countries had gathered here, and servants were bustling in all directions. All this reminded the boy of the past. They squeezed each other's hands tighter. The journey had been exhausting, so Alicia suggested resting a bit. A room had already been prepared for them in the palace. This slightly embarrassed the boy. He had heard that aristocrats always spent the night in the castle to avoid staying in inns. At least that was what Leif told him. But this time, he arrived as Alicia's fiancé. They stood in the middle of the luxurious hall, where every item gleamed with opulence. Although officially they were not yet married, everyone already considered them husband and wife. This made both of them feel awkward, their faces flushed. The girl cheerfully said that they finally lived in the same room. But Feek began to noticeably get nervous and only nodded. He remembered Goral's stern face when he warned, "Don't do stupid things or you'll regret it." So he decided to sleep on the sofa. Alicia was glowing with happiness. She asked if he was glad, and when he awkwardly asked again, she hugged him and looked into his eyes. She felt good. The boy also felt joy, being close to the beloved. Isn't that happiness? But he did not dare to say it. They just stood in silence, embracing. Suddenly, a cautious knocking was heard at the door. Someone asked for permission to enter. It was Leify. The boy opened the door. The maid apologized for disturbing their rest. She introduced several young men who wanted to congratulate the bride and groom. Fake looked at Alicia. The girl gave permission. He timidly asked if he should go with her, but she decided that probably he did not want to. But the boy objected. Now, as her husband, he had to accompany her. It was his responsibility. Endless congratulations began. Aristocrats approached one after another, stunned by what they saw. Their faces distorted for a moment from shock. Rumors about the engagement seemed to have already spread. Some recognized Fake. Not long ago, he worked as a blacksmith in the Empire. Their cheeks twitched as they tried to feign friendliness. It was clear from their looks. No one expected that Alicia's fiancé would turn out to be an ordinary craftsman. They had almost reached the next man, who hurriedly opened the door, apologizing to the girl. At that moment, the one who entered froze mid-word. They and Fake froze, recognizing each other. The young man looked at him in horror, trying to comprehend. How did Fake end up here in the palace? The heart pounded wildly. The boy pressed his hand to his chest. The girl looked at him anxiously. Morgan asked confusedly why she came to the ball exactly with the blacksmith. Alicia did not hesitate. Fake was her fiancé. What he heard stunned Morgan even more. The boy was silent. Finally, the man managed to speak again, saying she was supposed to marry only a skilled blacksmith, and she confirmed. That is why Fake became her fiancé. But Morgan did not recognize his abilities. However, for her, he was a master worthy of respect. His talent was acknowledged by Lord Goral himself. Behind them appeared a maid with an envelope in her hands. She handed the letter to Morgan. The Duke Bernasto's reply to the recent message. Fake's face tensed, and the girl looked at him with pity. After reading the letter, Morgan grimaced with rage. The next moment he exploded, shouting at the boy for disrespect and refusal to return to the palace. The reaction frightened the young man. Sweat appeared on his forehead from the tension. Morgan's gaze, full of anger, pierced the boy's body to the bone. The Fake could not utter a single word. He tried to gather his thoughts. After all, he no longer obeyed this man. The latter had no power over him. But memory flashed back the tyranny he had to endure all these years. It still hurt somewhere deep inside. 3 years of humiliation pierced his body, his voice stuck in his throat. It looked pathetic, but he had to come to his senses. Suddenly, Alicia took his hand, intertwined her fingers. Her calm smile gave him strength. He realized that she was saving him, and thanks to this, he was finally able to pull himself together. The fake answered firmly. He would not return to the palace. He chose another life, to be a blacksmith and Alicia's husband. Morgan was stunned for a moment, but then got angry again. His jaws clenched tighter and tighter. But Alicia did not stand aside. She did not know why Morgan wanted so much to bring the fake back, but as his fiancé, she would not allow him to be led to where abuse reigns. The man trembled with anger. He believed he had done too much for the boy. Unable to restrain himself, he rushed at the fake, swung his arm to teach him a lesson. But the fist was stopped by other hands. It was Leify. She intercepted the blow, twisted the man's arm, and threw him to the floor. He cursed her, demanded to be released, not believing that some servant dared to treat him that way. Leify was outraged. She recalled that Fake was now part of the Duke's family and warned, "Don't forget yourself. Whoever touches Duke Barnasto will receive the punishment they deserve." Morgan trembled, crawling towards the boy. Fake tense, sensing danger. And suddenly Morgan howled, begging Fake. He wanted to take back all previous words, calling them lies. The man decided to confess honestly. If the blacksmith does not return, he will lose his position at court. Morgan hoped that the title of court blacksmith would benefit the boy himself. But Alicia answered instead of the fiancé, "They do not need this title. They have already discussed everything with her father, and he supported their decision." Tears appeared in Morgan's eyes. But suddenly he heard footsteps above him. Fike repeated that he will not return, and added, he is grateful for the years together. The former boss grabbed the youth by the leg, begged him not to go, ready for anything. He promised to fulfill any request, but the boy irritably asked him to let go. Leify approached the man and pulled his hand away. She did not allow touching the master. The girl warned, if he disobeyed Fike again, she would report his behavior. Because of this, Morgan cried even more bitterly, with deeper despair. He left the room. Fake silently watched, and the bride smiled at him. Finally, the young man sighed with relief. Alicia hugged him, supporting his resilience. She was glad he endured. He thanked her for it. Hugging the girl, he confessed. At Morgan's appearance, his body trembled with horror. Alone, he could not have escaped that forge. Only thanks to her. But the girl believed the hero had also done a lot. The boy clearly understood he would not return to the palace. And together with Alicia, they would overcome everything. On the city streets, the couple sold products. The girl counted the profit. Today, they sold everything and earned 800,000 crowns. This was their current maximum. The boy thought, with such quality and a charming redhead, raising the price was difficult. To grow further, better materials should be used. But where to find them? The current profit had already reached 830,000 crowns. The Duke also noticed sales were not growing. The boy apologized, but it was unnecessary. The man opened the drawer and laid several papers on the table. He suggested that Fike take a look at them. After examining the documents, the boy asked what they were. He was explained. The building, once constructed as a forge, already has everything necessary. And now the premises are up for sale. The Duke was interested in the boy's opinion, but he did not understand the hint. Therefore, Gorel said directly, "Open your own workshop. This will increase recognition and simplify sales." The boy began to get nervous, imagining his own forge. He tried to explain that he still needed to study etiquette and aristocratic norms. But the father conspiratorially asked, didn't he dream of becoming the best blacksmith in the world? Alicia told him about this, but the Duke decided. Perhaps the boy had already given up on his dream. Fike objected. He still dreams of becoming a great blacksmith. But something more important appeared. The Duke was interested. What exactly? The boy blushed and quietly said, he wants to become a worthy man for Alicia. Deep down, he considered her too kind, noble, and beautiful for himself. Therefore, he wanted to learn to become her equal. If he, as a simpleton, appeared in high society, he would only embarrass the girl, and he could not allow that. The father was stunned. The Duke agreed. The young man really should master etiquette, and he had already arranged for a teacher. But the Duke said it deliberately. Only the most outstanding blacksmith in the world could become a worthy man for Alicia. Despite the importance of etiquette, Goral wanted the boy to strive for perfection. That was what he considered the true meaning, and he hoped to convey this to Fike. These words inspired the young man. He enthusiastically agreed, which greatly pleased the Duke. In response, the father offered to take the chest with money. The boy was embarrassed and hurried to explain, saying he could not accept it. But Goral insisted. Let him look inside. The young man opened the chest. It was filled with coins. The Duke reassured him. Fike earned this money himself, and he only added a little, which was not worth thinking about. After all, he is the fiancé of his daughter. All Goral wanted was for the young man to become the best blacksmith of the Barnasto house. Fake was pleasantly surprised and promised this. 3 years ago, Alicia stood by the sofa with sadness in her eyes. She remembered the young man's words when he dreamed, and had only one wish. He wanted to become the best blacksmith in the world. His eyes burned with passion when he spoke about it. Alicia whispered his name. It seems he was her peer, or slightly older. She remembered his happy face when he shared his dream. A strange feeling arose in the girl's chest. She placed her hand on her collarbone. For some inexplicable reason, she could not forget his smile. Her heart trembled, but this trembling was warm and pleasant. The maid noticed that the young lady was acting strangely and became worried. Alicia flinched from surprise. Leafy appeared suddenly. She asked her not to sneak up anymore because it was frightening. The maid called her several times, but the girl was lost in thought. This caused anxiety, wondering if something had happened. Alicia blushed and hurried to brush off the suspicions, assuring that she was fine. But Leafy noticed. The young lady was constantly confused after returning from Revenold, and her answers were contradictory. The maid decided to act decisively. She hinted that perhaps the young lady had met someone in the city. This embarrassed Alicia. What if someone had seen them? Leafy looked very expressively. This made the girl even more embarrassed. Mala recalled how the Duchess also began to ponder after solitary walks. Alicia looked amazed. Such insight surprised her. Leafy did not waste time, asked directly. Had she fallen in love? This question was a real blow to Alicia. She lost the power of speech. The young lady refused, but the blush on her cheeks was too obvious. Everything was written on her face. Leafy raised the young lady from birth, so she felt any change. Trembling with shame, the girl still dared to admit she is not sure that this is love. The maid asked pointed questions. Does she often think about the boy? Alicia herself did not understand what she was feeling, but later she agreed. Indeed, thoughts of him do not leave her. But this is new to her, because it never hurt or troubled her like this before. They met only once and talked a little. Is it really possible, just like that, suddenly? Leafy literally lit up. For her, it was true love at first sight. The young lady was surprised by such a formulation. Her face blushed even more. The maid tried to find out what she felt when she thought about the boy. Alicia answered uncertainly. It seems she likes him. But as soon as she remembered their conversation, her heart warmed. His smile was so sincere, so inspired. After her mother's death, her days became gray and empty. But after meeting the boy, it was as if a piece of the world returned to her. This story saddened Leafy, but Alicia did not believe it was love. She thought just a crush, because she did not know what love was. Despite the confusion in the young lady's soul, the maid supported her. After all, any beautiful feelings are worth attention. She sincerely rejoiced that such a special man appeared in her lady's life. The servant advised giving these feelings a chance. If he is really dear to her, maybe this boy can support her, walk beside her, love with all his heart. Alicia suddenly asked if Leafy herself had ever fallen in love. She paused before answering. It turned out she had not. She decided to be honest and admitted she had never felt that way. The young lady was surprised. After all, the servant was older than her, but the girl clarified she simply had not met a worthy partner. In their house, there were almost no men, and Leafy completely devoted herself to caring for Alicia. There was simply no room for a personal life. She had enough of one thing. If her mistress was happy, then she herself felt happy. They decided to simply continue observing their feelings. Leafy advised, during the next visit to Revenal, to talk to that boy. Perhaps this would clarify whether these feelings were real. The young lady liked this idea. She decided that she would indeed talk to him. She thanked the maid for her support. Leafy promised to wait for good news. Some time passed. Alicia was invited again to Revenal, the place where Fike lived. Usually she could not stand balls and went there reluctantly, but this time her soul was light. After all, she was to see him again after a long separation. She was met by Morgan. She remembered that he was the same blacksmith from the workshop with whom they had exchanged formalities several times over family matters, but she did not want to see him at all. The man politely asked why she had come to the palace. The lady replied, she wanted to see the blacksmith who had started serving at the court. Hearing the name, Morgan was surprised. He became worried whether that boy had done something bad, and immediately apologized to Lady Alicia for any possible inconvenience. She assured him the boy was not guilty of anything. She just wanted to greet him. Morgan understood that it was about Feek, who worked in the workshop, so he offered to accompany the young lady. When they arrived, he knocked, warning of their arrival, and shouted that he was coming in. The young man was just working on the sword. Hearing the voice, he asked how he could help, and suddenly saw the girl next to Morgan. Their eyes met. He spoke her name. Alicia was surprised that he remembered it. Morgan noticed that it was strange. She came to greet the newcomer, but it seemed they had already met. The girl replied that only once. She pretended that she barely remembered his name, although in fact she knew it by heart. The young man was glad. He was pleased that such a girl remembered him. But awkwardness hung in the air. The chief silently watched them. The lady thanked him for the escort and allowed herself to attend to her own affairs. She wanted to talk a little with Sir Faik and leave. Morgan agreed, but cast a glance at the boy that made him uneasy. Before leaving, the man placed his hand on the boy's shoulder, as if advising how to behave. But in fact, he squeezed his fingers with all his might. Anger boiled inside him. Alicia noticed this and was surprised. She was also very nervous. Faik addressed her by surname. The girl felt awkward. After all, at the first meeting, she introduced herself by name. Summoning her courage, she asked him not to speak formally, but he did not understand what she meant. She said directly, he could call her Alicia. The young man was confused. How could he address her like that if he was not an aristocrat? The girl apologized. She did not think that he might feel awkward, but the boy assured her it was not about that. He was simply an ordinary boy from the people. She sincerely admitted there were almost no peers in the palace, so she wanted to communicate with him from time to time. Maybe even become friends if he didn't mind. The girl herself was surprised by those words. The young man was momentarily confused. She was worried he might refuse. But Faik agreed, addressing her by name, and said he would be only glad for such an opportunity. Alicia was genuinely surprised by the sudden agreement. She even apologized if her request was selfish. And once again she asked, does he really want to be her friend? The boy happily confirmed he really wanted to communicate with her. The aristocrat thanked him for that. In that case, she asked if he would return to work if from that moment she came to visit him. Faik smiled and replied that she could come at any time. Modestly wishing him luck at work, the girl said goodbye. They waved goodbye to each other. Alicia became more and more convinced that she wanted to be close to Feek. Since then, whenever she came to any ball, she immediately ran to the smithy to see him. At first, their communication was awkward, but gradually the nervousness melted away. The girl felt at ease beside him. Time flew unnoticed, and she wished their meetings would last forever. Her feelings grew deeper with every conversation. The voice of Feik, the smile, his character, thoughts, conversations, the dream of becoming the best blacksmith in the world. All of this awakened strong emotions in her. Step by step, Alicia began to fall in love with everything that made him himself. But one day, as always, she visited the workshop. Swords lay scattered on the floor, and the boy sat nearby with a gloomy look. She greeted him, but there was no answer for a long time. The hero slowly turned around. His face and clothes were dirty. He apologized for looking exhausted and asked if she had come to visit him again. Alicia immediately felt something was wrong, and it had been going on for a long time. She anxiously asked if everything was all right. Maybe something had happened in the workshop? But the young man tried to distract her, saying there was a lot of work. He hadn't even had time to change clothes, so he was meeting her in dirt. The girl understandingly suggested visiting another time. But Faik always repeated the same thing, and even she began to feel that something was fading in him. In the workshop, she saw only him alone. At first, she considered it luck. After all, she could spend time with him alone. But later she realized she had never seen any other worker. And the boy himself seemed to be melting before her eyes, looking worse every day. His clothes were worn and dirty, as if he had never left the forge, working day and night. Alicia felt pain and anxiety because of this. Leafy said that even without conducting an investigation, just by his appearance alone, one could understand. The boy works alone, exhausted in dirty clothes. Therefore, he is treated badly. And probably other blacksmiths simply mock him. Alicia agreed. There was no other explanation. But what to do next? She was a stranger, had no power. There was only one option left, for Feek to confess everything himself. But the girl knew that he dreamed of becoming the best blacksmith in the world. If he told the truth about the bullying at court, most likely he would be dismissed. And then he would take a step back in his dream, possibly without return. He valued his dream above all, so much that he was ready to endure humiliating treatment and remain silent. Alicia despaired. The young man closed himself off, not confessing what was eating him from the inside. She was afraid that one day he simply would not endure such a life. Suddenly, the maid expressed an idea that seemed absurd at first glance. To save him, she suggested that the lady make Fake an offer, propose an engagement. Alicia was stunned. Leafy reminded that their country is famous for blacksmiths, and the Bernasto house has everything necessary for blacksmithing. If Lord Gural learns about his daughter's wish, he will definitely support such a candidate. The aristocrat realized if the young man became her fiancé, his status would change. He would be surrounded by duties and forced to master court manners. She was afraid that all this would harm his goal, and he would no longer be perceived as a talented blacksmith, but as the fiancé of the Duke's third daughter. Leafy agreed. Status would change his life. Focusing on the craft would become much harder. But Alicia forgot one thing. Fake is not just a blacksmith, but a person with a strong will and an unbreakable dream. If even the court tyranny did not break him, then the life of the Duchess's fiancé would not shake his goals. Moreover, the maid asked directly, "Does she love him?" And the girl, without hesitation, confirmed she would do everything to help. In Leafy's opinion, he would be happier next to her lady. She believed that the young man also had feelings. Otherwise, he would not find time for her again and again. She took the lady by the hand. At least it was worth making a proposal. If he did not want to, no one would force him. Alicia was inspired. Leafy could not even imagine who in the world would refuse to become Bernasto's fiancé. The girl imagined a smiling Fike, and her expression changed. She thanked the maid. She decided to talk to him. She could make him happy, and she herself wanted to see such a man as her husband. The maid smiled and wished her good luck. Some time passed. Alicia arrived at the palace and went to the workshop. There she found Fike lying on the floor, covered in bruises. In despair, she thought, the other blacksmiths no longer hide their abuse. Even on his face, traces of blows. She approached closer and called him. She touched his forehead, and the young man opened his eyes. He suddenly jumped up, exclaiming that he hadn't finished making the sword. But then he saw Lady Alicia in front of him. Now Fake was calmly sleeping in bed, in his room, in the Duke's house. The girl wished him good morning, and that woke him up. Seeing his smiling fiancé, he thought he was still dreaming. She had come only to wake him, and apologized if she scared him. Coming to his senses, the young man wished her good morning. He himself was surprised he had slept so long. He was nervous. Although they were officially considered engaged, they slept in different rooms. The girl apologized. She hadn't wanted to wake him because he was sleeping so sweetly. But he only thanked her. Everything was fine. He was happy she had come, and he only asked what time it was. Alicia answered, 7 in the morning. But her father wanted to see the hero, so she suggested going to him together. Hearing the name Lord Gural, Fake instantly jumped out of bed. They had to hurry. He valued his relationship with his fiancée, and now that the engagement was real, he could not allow himself to lose something so dear to his heart. All decisions concerning the marriage were made by the parents. It was an old but unchanging tradition. So Fake had to behave impeccably to strengthen the relationship with the bride's father and not give him even a hint of breaking off the engagement. Alicia stopped the young man. His hair was tousled. She herself wanted to fix it. Fake approached the mirror. The state of the hairstyle was truly pitiful. It needed urgent correction. In his head, it already flashed how the Duke looks with disgust at such an unkempt fool and refuses him his daughter. The bride called him, offered him to sit down. In her hands, a comb and a bowl of water. With tenderness and care, she combed the strands, fixing each curl with love. Fake couldn't hold back and muttered an apology for the trouble. But to Alicia, it sounded absurd. Caring for a man is her future duty. He asked with surprise if she really thought so, and blushed with joy. Alicia laughed, poking his cheek with her finger. His reaction was too funny. The young man did the same in response, and noticed that the girl's cheeks also turned red. Embarrassed, she began to make excuses. But he noticed something else. Even her ears turned pink. Could it be that his future wife is really that shy? And her cheeks are so soft. The girl pouted and threatened. If he didn't stop teasing, she would no longer comb his hair. He jokingly replied that it was too harsh a punishment. He admitted in the morning no one ever helped him arrange his hair. This surprised Alicia. After all, among aristocrats, this is the norm. So he decided he would have to ask the servants for this. Alicia indignantly puffed out her cheeks. She disagrees. She herself wants to take care of his hairstyle every day. Fake was surprised. Does she really want to do this every day? After all, it is exhausting. The girl scolded him. How could he be so silly as not to understand her true intentions? She sincerely admitted she loves him very much, so she wants to help in everything she can. And seeing him sleepy, with a slight mess on his head, for her, this is the greatest reward. But suddenly she came to her senses. Maybe he doesn't want this? She was thinking only about herself. Fake blushed even more. But he gathered his thoughts and admitted that he really appreciated her care. Proudly hugging her knees, she exclaimed happily, "So it's decided." The young man was scared. If she came every morning, his heart simply would not endure. Until recently, he could not even dream that they would become bridegroom and bride. It all seemed like a dream, but he had no right to relax. Ahead was still the path to the dream. He had to become the best blacksmith and a worthy man for Alicia. When she finished styling, Fake looked in the mirror and praised her for the wonderful job. Alicia reminded that it was worth drying the hair with air magic. It was still wet. Then she took clean clothes from the chair and handed them to the groom. The smile was still on her face, when suddenly he asked her to leave while he changed. Her face instantly changed. She became embarrassed. She ran out of the room, slamming the door, apologizing for the absurdity of the situation. And Fake only thought, will every morning be like this? The young man entered the hall where the Duke was waiting for them. He wished good morning and apologized for being late. The bride's father asked, what exactly delayed them? Suddenly, Leify appeared from behind the door and slyly informed that the couple had already flirted in the morning. The lovers turned towards her, surprised, confused. But the girl had already managed to escape, disappearing around the corner. The Duke first apologized for the morning invitation, but then suddenly became alert. Something dawned on him. He looked anxiously at Fake. Did the other meaning mean something else? After all, the boy promised not to do foolish things, but they quickly reassured him. Alicia only helped the groom to comb his hair. The master of the house sighed with relief, but noted he called early because he would be busy later, so he wanted to talk before departure. Girl asked if the young man still wanted to obtain an aristocratic education. Fake confirmed with enthusiasm. After the ball, where all matters in the palace were concluded, this issue became especially important. After all, then he openly embarrassed himself. Greetings, manners, dances, everything was pitiful. But he had no choice. He had to learn at least the basics. The Duke believed that there was no need to rush. Fake rarely appeared in public, and the workload was already considerable. But the hero did not agree. He had no right to disgrace either Alicia or the Duke himself. In that case, the father decided to entrust this matter to Alicia and Leif. They were both smart and reliable, and studying with close people would be easier and more effective. Alicia was delighted. Now they would have even more time together, and at the same time they could study. Fake also had nothing against it, and sincerely thanked the future father-in-law. In response, he advised not to overload himself, and not to forget the main thing. Blacksmithing. The young man nodded. This was his sacred path. Then it was time for a more serious conversation. The Duke took a small book from his hands. He handed it to Fake. It was about acquiring his own shop. It was time to decide on a place for future life. The master prepared several options from which any could be chosen. Fake recalled that they had not yet decided when and where exactly to open the forge. There were many proposals. Together with Alicia, the young man carefully considered each option. One building immediately caught his attention. The shop was surprisingly cheap. The Duke's face instantly became strange as soon as they remembered this house. Alicia also noticed the price was 3 times lower than the rest, and the building itself stood right on Adventure Seeker Street. It was not just a store, but a whole smithing complex, also with a residential part. Other options also had forges, but all were inferior. Some were cramped, others poorly equipped, still others in an unfortunate location. None compared to this one. It was the perfect option. The Duke flinched and asked again. Could it be that the young man was choosing exactly it? Yes, he included it in the list, but he himself would not recommend it. Alicia asked in surprise. Then why does father think so? Under such wonderful conditions, the price is too low. This is clearly suspicious. There is a trap here. And there really is one. A ghost lives in that building. This was said quite seriously. Fake froze. A ghost? He did not understand. What exactly was being talked about? At the word ghost, the girl trembled all over, And the boy was even more surprised. He could not believe that the Duke really said such a thing. Monsters. One can still imagine, but ghosts? No, they don't exist, do they? But the previous owner, like the one before him, both left this shop precisely because a spirit appeared in it. According to rumors, a blacksmith died there, but the boy did not really believe in such fairy tales. They say the spirit wanted the workshop. That is why the Duke was against choosing this house. Alicia was both angry and scared at the same time. Why did her father even suggest such a horror to them? Gural justified himself. The equipment there was really excellent. He wanted to show it so they could understand the full picture. Fake admitted honestly. He was not bothered by either spirits or other mysticism. He was not afraid of it at all. The fiancé, on the contrary, was almost hysterical, and yet it was the best option. And the rumors could simply be a fabrication, although the question, why the predecessors fled, remained open. To refuse such a profitable deal because of silly talk is senseless. The place, although on the outskirts of Adventurer Street, is perfect for trade. As soon as the smithy opens, potential clients will literally pass by it every day. Fake was to become the best blacksmith in the world and be a worthy husband to Alicia, and definitely not at the expense of some unprofitable nook. To realize his plans, he needed the right place, and this was perfect. But looking back at his family, the young man saw fear in their eyes. There was no point in pressing further. So he suggested just looking at the shop, without any obligations, and then make a decision. The Duke asked again, is Fake really not afraid? But the boy insisted. If it were about a monster, that would be another matter. But this is just a regular ghost. Ghosts and monsters are completely different things. Demons can be defeated, but with ghosts, it's more complicated. Yet rumors about them always seem doubtful. Fake himself did not delve into it. In the end, Gural allowed choosing any option that would be liked, and handed over the keys in advance. Having received the bunch of keys, the boy thanked him. The conversation ended. The Duke had to go on business. The hero was delighted. Now there was a clear plan for the day. He suggested to his fiancée to walk around the city together to see the shops in person. Alicia hesitated. The boy thought she simply did not want to, but in fact the girl was worried precisely because of the house where the ghost lives. He agreed, and he was also interested in seeing that shop. He was surprised by Alicia's strong anxiety, and at the same time, she was so cute in her fear. Then he suggested going alone. But the girl, despite her horror, did not want to let him go alone. She would go too. After all, if they were going to conduct business together, even without an official marriage, she had to be strong and resilient, like the future blacksmith's wife. The young man looked at her kindly, called to set off on the road, and promised he would be nearby. She need not worry. And so the couple, together with Leafy and the guards, set off to the place. The townspeople watched the procession with interest, recognizing Lady Alicia and her fiancé. The girl held herself confidently, but Faik looked somewhat awkward, already known as that blacksmith everyone talked about. He was very young. One of the passing women greeted Alicia, giving her a compliment. She really looked beautiful, and the boy meanwhile thought, this is what it is like to be an aristocrat. So many glances. He was not used to this at all. First of all, the young man wanted to look at the main candidate, the very same cursed shop. The girl asked with displeasure, could it be that this place still attracts him the most? But for Fake, everything was simple. The conditions there were the best. He could not even imagine in his dreams that he would be able to afford a forge in Kiev, and even within the budget. Moreover, Alicia herself was initially delighted with that house until she heard about the ghost. All they had left was to make sure the building was safe. Then she would feel calmer. She still needed to mature a bit. The lady asked the maid what she thought about the ghost after all. Alicia herself did not believe in spirits, although the rumors were quite frightening. One thing is when they gossip about ghosts, but people also said that the residents of the house went mad, and at night the ringing of iron was heard. Prepared food disappeared, and strange stories became more and more numerous. Perhaps some of them are fiction, but there is no smoke without fire. The maid believed until there is a definite answer, it is not worth risking oneself and buying this building. Fake listened carefully. He became curious. Was everything really as terrible there as everyone said? Finally, they reached the place. Before them stood a rather large building, much more impressive than it had seemed from the drawings. Alicia called it creepy. The shop, though old, looked quite ordinary. Its wear even added charm to the old forge. The girl trembled with fear. She couldn't even look at the building. She was offered to wait outside, but Alicia clung to the boy, begging him to protect her. She will endure. Levi just laughed at such a scene. The knights decided to stay outside, but in case of danger, they would immediately rush to help. Only the young ones went inside. It was dark there, and from the depths came some strange creaking. The creaking grew louder. Clear footsteps sounded. Fake and Alicia almost fainted from horror. Someone was descending the stairs, called Alicia, and then appeared fully. He recognized the boy, and the boy recognized him. It was Rig. The acquaintance was surprised. It turned out that the buyer of the building was Fake himself. He did not expect such a surprise. Now everything became clear. Fake's name already seemed familiar to him then, but the address was from the Barnasto house. And so, the buyer turned out to be Mr. Fake. The boy was surprised that he was suddenly addressed so respectfully. Probably this is due to social differences. This is how an aristocrat is formed. It turned out Rig was a merchant and owner of this building, and the girl in the mask, this is Lady Alicia. She confirmed that Fake is her fiancé. The merchant recalled the conversation with the boy about the price. Then he was tense and nervous, and now everything fell into place. He took off his hat and bowed his head, apologizing. He did not know who was in front of him and behaved rudely. He was told to raise his head. The girl added that they were the ones hiding their statuses, and if Rig did not suspect anything, it meant the disguise was successful. Fake supported her, asking to be addressed as before, but Rig politely refused, although he sincerely appreciated their friendliness. Then the boy decided to get down to business. After all, they came to inspect the premises. The guests were surprised that he himself would personally show everything. As it turned out, Rig was just cleaning before their visit and did not expect them to arrive so early. The guests apologized. They just really wanted to see everything with their own eyes. And although everything happened unexpectedly, they agreed and decided to fully rely on him. They began the inspection. First, the trading hall. Shelves, stands, all equipment was in place. Very convenient for customers. The boy already imagined, if they just delivered the goods, they could open the shop as early as tomorrow. Behind the counter, the entrance to the warehouse. Another door led to a corridor with several empty rooms. Then they approached the huge double doors leading to the forge, connected to the main building. Overall, everything was quite old, but the tools and equipment remained in good condition. Alicia was delighted with such equipment. It seemed the previous owner was a true master and devoted to blacksmithing. It was believed that the first owner of this building was a legendary blacksmith whose creations became a legend among craftsmen. Rig was surprised. He had never heard of such a master, and it seemed incredible. People said that his skills were not inferior even to the founder of the Barnasto house. They constantly competed and became stronger. Fake looked at the bride with surprise. How did she know about this? She answered calmly. She had heard about him, but without details. They said he mass-produced incredible weapons. Rig added, the blacksmith's works named Bastel were of great value. Some have survived to this day, although accompanied by a bad reputation. In old age, the master worked with an obsession bordering on madness. Alicia recalled the cursed weapon. Rig told about Bastel's swords, which were considered cursed by the people. Fake had also heard about them. It was rumored that these blades absorbed the creator's anger and distorted the owner's mind. One of them hung on the wall. The young man stared at the blade and suddenly felt something strange. Alicia became worried, but he assured her that he was fine. Then a sharp pain pierced his head, although it might have been just a phantom flash. He began to hesitate. Seeing this, Rig thoughtfully remarked that perhaps Fake should not buy this place. He was immediately asked, had he also heard the rumors about ghosts? But the matter was not about rumors. One blacksmith had already bought this shop and went mad, losing the ability to work. Fake could not believe it. They had already called the church, and a saint examined the sword in the building, but found nothing. The curse could be weakened by magic, and the saint was able to lift them, but many blades remained untouched. Only a strong spirit could tame them. They looked at the sword again. Fake asked if it was really cursed, but Rig did not know. Bastel had ordered to leave it here, and the king allowed it. The young man began to doubt. So, were these curses real or fabrications? They decided to go up to the second floor and inspect the living quarters. Fake understood. If he opened a forge here, he would have to spend the night on site, and the premises were spacious, with all amenities. The inspection came to an end. Rig inquired what the boy thought about the building. Everything was fine, except for the bad reputation. but for now they decided to think it over. The seller agreed to wait. Li-Fi herself offered to accompany the couple to the next property. They inspected a few more places. Somewhere the forge was spacious, but the shop was small. Somewhere the opposite. Somewhere there was no living space. And although the equipment was good, the appearance was too mediocre. After Bastel's workshop, all others seemed like compromises, and the prices were too high. An ideal combination of price and conditions was needed, and it was only in that special workshop. The worst was the location. Other options were far from the street of adventurers. For a renowned master, this is not a problem. But for a nameless blacksmith like Fake, it could become a real obstacle. When they returned, the maid inquired, was Bastel's workshop still the favorite? He agreed. You could say yes, but he was curious about what others thought. Li-Fi admitted, if you discard superstitions, the conditions there are the best. Alicia also agreed, but at the mention of the curse, she became anxious. The maid was also afraid for their safety. In fact, if the opportunity arose, the boy would gladly ask what it is like to work in Enville. After all, that master was a legend whose fame lived through generations. The girl began to complain. What if Fake gets injured, falls under the curse, and, in the worst case, loses the ability to work forever? Li-Fi suggested first finding out more about the forge itself. If it is possible to confirm that the place is safe, Alicia will also support the purchase. She just wanted to create ideal conditions for the groom's workshop. Fake sincerely thanked the girl for her support, and she just smiled. After all, it was all for him. They set off back to Bastel's workshop, unwilling to waste time. But approaching, they noticed a figure. It was not Sir Rig. Alicia was frightened. Something was troubling her. The girl looked more closely. It was Alma. She greeted Faik, whom she had not seen for a long time. Then she turned to his fiancée. She had heard about her from the mentor, but could not believe that the mysterious girl in the mask was Alicia herself. Alma blushed. Her behavior in the past was probably inappropriate, so she sincerely apologized. Alicia reassured her, saying there was no need to worry, but in her thoughts she recalled an unpleasant moment. And what she called a trifle seemed only an excuse.